Chapter 1576–1600 Supremacy Games 1576. This isn't going as planned. What crap are you spewing? Felix frowned. I am not interfering around. Announce your surrender telepathically for all to hear. Don't make me reiterate it, otherwise, I will get you demonized. There was no way Felix was going to let Lord Marduk out of his grasp without him surrendering first. After all, even when everyone could see that he defeated him, if he uttered nothing to confirm it, he would be the schmuck for letting him go. As for killing him, Felix would never make such a dumb mistake. Lord Marduk was too useful for his operations, and if he didn't fulfill his end of the bargain, then he would demonize him coercively, even if it meant starting a war with all the primogenitors in place. Demonize me? Go for it. Lord Marduk smiled. You have my blessings. His nonchalant attitude threw off Felix and the tenants completely. Was he always like this? He asked the tenants, his voice tinged with a mix of curiosity and frustration. No, Lord Marduk is too smart to play hard to get, especially in such a situation. His indifference could be a facade, a calculated act meant to throw you off balance, Lady Sphinx suggested, her tone indicative of respect for Lord Marduk's tactical acumen. I feel the same, something is off about the situation. Lord Shiva frowned. I honestly never thought you would be able to take him down even with his lack of knowledge. He is too astute to end in your grasp. Thanks for the trust. Felix's eyelids twitched. Still, deep down, Felix also felt that it shouldn't have been this easy in spite of his assault being close to perfection. But, Felix's senses didn't pick any foul play about Lord Marduk's body. Both his soul and body were perfect, and if he was using a wisp inside a clone or such, he would have easily found out. There is only one way to find out. Felix eyed Lord Marduk coldly and said, You brought this upon yourself. With a determined expression, he began to direct his crimson mist, attempting to initiate the process of demonization on Lord Marduk right before the eyes of the primogenitors. The very concept of demonizing a fellow primogenitor sent shockwaves through the cosmic assembly. Landlord! You can't do this! Sheriff's voice carried a rumble of anger as he seemed like he was about to spring into action and attack him. Boy, you have already won the battle, no need to be extreme and humiliate him. The silent Lord Osiris spoke expressionlessly, his voice carried a tint of warning. Felix's allies, however, rallied to his defense. He left him no choice, he refuses to surrender. Lady Sphinx said. Then kill him. Lord Osiris replied indifferently, I haven't uttered anything about the Darkin's demonization since you were enemies, but this is too far gone for a mere showdown. Kill him or let him go, but you won't enslave him before us. All non-affiliated primogenitors to Felix took the same stance, making him understand that it wasn't going to end pleasantly for him if he went for it. Their reaction was understandable since demonization was merely another word for enslavement. They refused to have the creation primogenitor enslaved not for his sake but for their own sake. If even the current strongest primogenitor could be enslaved, what would stop Felix from making a 180-degree switch and coming after them too? So, they had to make a stand before him, right now, right here, to show him that they wouldn't roll to the side and let him do as he pleased just because of his spiritual pressure. Unfortunately for them, Felix had no plans to listen to their pleas. All he cared about was getting as strong as possible to rescue Asna, and he understood that every little assistance was important. In other words, he was getting the creation primogenitor's powers either amicably or forcefully. Will you still feel the same if I told you that he knew ABO? Okay, that's enough. Before Felix could finish his sentence, Lord Marduk interrupted him. I was curious to see how the demonization would work on me, but you had to ruin my fun by being a little snitch. You, hey. Felix didn't even focus on what Lord Marduk was saying. His stunned eyes were focused on his body, which was melting before his own eyes into a pool of vivid colors. His spiritual pressure, which was his ultimate weapon, could do nothing to contain it. After it slipped from his grasp, the colorful pool exploded into a starry color rainbow, astounding everyone watching it. Just as everyone was about to snap from their daze and react to this unexpected development, the fabric of the cosmos shifted once again, causing the space around them to begin to warp and shimmer. Then, a colossal, ethereal figure materialized before the assembly. It was Lord Marduk, but not as he had seen before. His spectral form was immense, transcending the physical confines of space. His body, a manifestation of pure cosmic energy, glowed with the intensity of creation itself. The most striking feature, however, was his eyes. The twin stars, dangerously close to each other in the sky, now served as his eyes, blazing with the fire of a billion suns. They cast their gaze upon the onlookers, a silent testament to the unfathomable power of the creation primogenitor. One look at him and everyone would be left with a single description: a literal god. Impossible, impossible. This is impossible. No primogenitor should possess such boundless energy. Is this some kind of trick? It defies all logic. I can feel his real presence. This is incredible. I'm at a loss for words. The enraged primogenitors all put their anger aside, replacing it with a sense of wonder and increased edibility, not daring to believe what their eyes were feeding them. Their reaction was understandable as they knew that primogenitor's size upper limit couldn't surpass a small star. If they grew beyond it, they wouldn't be able to sustain it due to the energy consumption. Siren, her voice reflecting the awe of the moment, whispers, "He's become a cosmic entity unto himself." Wait, this isn't part of the script. How can a primogenitor be this powerful? Even Felix, known for his unshakable composure, found himself frozen in place, his previous confidence shaken by the sheer magnitude of Lord Marduk's transformation. As Marduk's form stabilized, revealing a cosmic being of unfathomable size, his massive mouth opened. His voice, now resonating like the rumble of the universe itself, boomed across the expanse. Do not be surprised, this galaxy, every star, every planet, every black hole, has been crafted by my hands. I have woven the fabric of this cosmos from scratch. Are you kidding me? This defies the laws of the universe. How can it be? The revelation didn't really ease their shock. In fact, it doubled down on their reaction and added a tint of horror in their hearts. They wanted to disbelieve him badly, knowing that it should have been even more impossible to create a whole damn galaxy from a creation domain. The energy needed to pull something like this couldn't even be put in numbers. While Lord Loki's illusion domain in the UVR could be accessed throughout the universe, its energy intake was sustainable for him since he was bringing everyone's consciousness into his illusion domain. It was like he was inviting them into an already manifested illusionary world, and whatever they do in it wouldn't exhaust his energy much since they were merely imagining themselves doing those things. But this was different. It was a literal galaxy in the universe supported by creation energy. Marduk, looks like you have finally managed to decipher some new techniques from the inscriptions. Lord Kaos commentated expressionlessly while manifesting himself into a massive humanoid void with starry lights in his body. Lord Marduk, is he right? Did you really master a new one? His comment caused everyone's expression to light up akin to a Christmas tree, knowing that the only path left for them to improve relied heavily on those techniques. If an elemental technique was really responsible for allowing Lord Marduk to pull this off, then, they must have it at all costs. I did decipher a couple of ones, and I have utilized their combination to help me create my very first galaxy. Lord Marduk confirmed it calmly, not too bothered by them knowing the truth. His answer sure did startle all of them, even the elemental lords. A couple. How can you hide it from us? Kumiho acted super upset. We would have offered whatever you wanted for the sake of learning just one of them. It's never too late, my lord, just voice your request, your order, and it shall come true, Erebus announced with a tone filled with unyielding resolve. Most of the primogenitors shared the same crazed reaction. They didn't even seem to care any more about what Felix was going to say before the transformation happened. Who could blame them? Everyone was left stagnated in the same place for eons after mastering their elements fully. The only ways of improvement left were either mastering a domain or learning to advance in their third stage of manipulation. Whether it was an elemental lord, a normal primogenitor, or even Felix. They were at the same step in the third stage of manipulation, which was mastering the conversion technique. Now they received a confirmation that new techniques were learned and were shown their capabilities. How could they not go nuts? When Felix saw their reaction, he had a feeling that Lord Marduk could literally order them to jump his ass for their sake and they would go for it blindly. This isn't going as planned at all. Felix's expression wasn't so good. 1577 in full control, of everything, and anything. By now, he came to the realization that Lord Marduk had baited him to expose his source of confidence while at the same time putting the fight inside his own creation domain. The chance to object or call him out for it had expired the instant he attacked him. Doing it now would merely make him a laughingstock. But how? How can he escape from my spiritual pressure like that? My senses can't be wrong, he was the real deal. Felix knitted his eyebrows in confusion. He has created an entire galaxy. Lady Sphinx responded, it's not far-fetched that he managed to have a perfect understanding of his soul, allowing him to create other perfect versions with a 1:1 ratio. In the case of destruction, Felix was able to destroy anything in the universe as long as he had a great understanding of it. This was how concept destruction worked and how totality collapse was a slightly weaker version of the destruction domain since it was just concept destruction ability with all of Lord Shiva's understandings packed into one ability. Creation shared the same process. Lord Marduk could create anything as long as he had an understanding of it. This meant that it was possible for him to create other versions of himself with perfect copies of his soul. If your theory is correct, then, isn't this a much better ability than Manana Angel's true immortality? Felix sucked a deep cold breath in shock. His reaction was understandable when considering that Lord Marduk could literally create multiple perfect versions of himself, sharing the same intelligence, strength, and powers. While it was difficult to accept it, Lord Marduk's escape from his spiritual pressure made sense. He exploded into a colorful rainbow mist, which represented the elemental creation energy, entailing that everything about him was manifested out of creation energy. In other words, he merely cancelled his ability and Felix's entire assault was foiled. I think it's best that you leave. Thor advised with a solemn tone, your spiritual pressure might be stronger, but you can't hit what you can't touch. In a sense, he is the entire galaxy just like four mother Siamese and it's close to impossible to deal with such beings in their home ground. Lord Marduk could be said to have transcended the level of a primogenitor and was on the doorstep of being a god. The only thing holding him back was his spiritual pressure, which was unfortunately impossible to enhance for him. Still, he could be said to be unkillable unless a true Unigen in his peak form decided to erase the entire galaxy. If Felix was anywhere close to that level, he wouldn't be struggling to handle a significantly weakened version of Nimmo. No, I may not win, but I also can't lose. Felix rejected his suggestion while narrowing his eyes at the celestial projection of Lord Marduk. Well played, Elder, you possess such monstrous strength and powers, yet still, you sacrificed a clone to bait out my trump card. Felix praised with a cold tone. It might not seem like much, but Felix had figured out that Lord Marduk had the entire battle planned out the moment he accepted his challenge. He gave him a month and a location, knowing that Felix would come at the earliest to check the battleground if it was fair or not. When he arrived and Lord Marduk wasn't there, this planted an idea that his biggest chance was to assault him while he was emerging from the spatial rift. To stress it further and keep Felix's senses heightened to the max, he didn't make an appearance until the last couple of hours, making it impossible for Felix to change his plan. All of this gave him the illusion of having to go all out right from the start on his clone. In other words, Lady Sphinx wasn't joking around when she said that he was playing chess and was always a dozen steps ahead of his opponent. I can excuse your assurance to your young age, but I can't excuse your master's and my fellow peers' confidence in you. Lord Marduk expressed out loud with an interested tone, though, I didn't expect your source to be spiritual pressure. I kinda wonder how you managed to increase it. Lord Marduk completely ignored the woes and calls of the ancestors about his new elemental techniques. Yet, none of them complained about it and remained silent, knowing that his focus was still on the battle. How about we call this a draw and sit one out? Felix suggested calmly, share me with your new techniques and I will share my secret. Felix had no plans to continue this losing battle any longer. In fact, now that he knew it would be near impossible to demonize Lord Marduk and that he possessed new powerful elemental techniques, he preferred cooling down their conflict. Such powerful techniques were a must when dealing with Nimmo, one could even say, it was best to prioritize them over the Devourer's/Dragon marks. Alas, Lord Marduk didn't share the same thought. Not so fast, little one. Lord Marduk smiled coldly, my friends clamored about your greatness, and how you are our only hope to deal with those beings. But from what I have seen, I am not too impressed. So, the only way for you to leave this place is either dead or if I decide to let you go. Is that so? Felix narrowed his eyes frigidly. Felix was no longer a child who would allow himself to get treated lower by primogenitors. It was clear that Lord Marduk didn't see him as an equal, otherwise, he wouldn't be trying to test him like this. Unbothered by his attitude, Lord Marduk waved his colossal hand and conjured a cosmic chessboard, an immense and intricate lattice that stretched across the stars. Each square of this board was a window into a different reality, each with its own unique environment and set of laws. Each square had a massive cosmic projection of the chess piece that stood on it, ranging from bishops, knights, kings, queens, pawns, etc. He is really in full control of everything here. How fascinating! The ancestors watched in silent awe as these realities flickered into existence. One square revealed a world where time flew backward, another where gravity was a mere suggestion rather than a law, and yet another where light bent and refracted in impossible ways. The chessboard was a masterpiece of creation, showcasing Marduk's unparalleled ability to shape and manipulate the fabric of the universe. Felix, undaunted by the grandeur of this spectacle, found himself within one of these realities. He stood in a realm where the ground beneath him pulsed with alien energy, the sky above swirling with colors that defied description. Marduk's voice boomed across the cosmos, how about a simple game of chess? Navigate these realities and reach my side. Then, I will have that tea with you. No, thank you. However, Felix refused to play by Marduk's rules. He understood that engaging with these individually crafted realities would be playing into Marduk's hand, a game with endless permutations and uncertainties. Plus, it would make him look like someone with no backbone or character to abide by someone's tests, just because they had something he desired. Totality collapse. With a steely resolve, Felix tapped into the depths of his destructiveness and channeled wholeness collapse, targeting those constructed realities. Felix's form glowed with an intense light as he released his energy, sending crimson ripples across the cosmic chessboard. One by one, the squares of the chessboard began to flicker and fade. The realities, each a complex construct of Marduk's creation, started to unravel with the totality collapse's horrific rapid expansion. The backward-flowing time began to normalize, the warped gravity stabilized, and the bending light straightened. The chessboard, once a kaleidoscope of alternate dimensions, became a blank slate, the realities erased from existence. A split moment later, the chessboard followed suit and got sent back to the ether, leaving behind the same pitch-black darkness from before. Most of the ancestors gasped in a deep cold breath at the sight of Felix standing all alone amidst nothingness. Erebus, his voice laced with surprise, mutters, "It's been a long while since I have seen wholeness collapse in action, it's sure as frightening as ever." Marduk, witnessing the dismantling of his cosmic chessboard, didn't bat an eyelid, his eyes, those twin stars, burned brighter as he regarded Felix with the same indifferent look. "Boy, you know I can recreate it again just as fast," Lord Marduk mentioned calmly. "I can also destroy it just as fast," Felix replied. I know you can, but for how long? Lord Marduk smiled faintly. You see, this entire galaxy is made out of formation element, even the neutral energy is part of it. The moment Felix heard this, his expression turned slightly for the worse. He realized that Lord Marduk meant that his conversion technique was useless in his galaxy since he could disable the neutral energy in the cosmos entirely. In other words, his energy tank was confined to what he had in it at the moment and it would not be able to sustain spamming wholeness collapse for long. 1578 Unwilling to bow down. Controlling even neutral energy is crazy. Candace expressed with an astounded tone. She understood that while Felix could use his abilities just fine, he would not be able to recover his lost energy unless he utilized elemental stones or such recovery assisting objects. In his case, it was no longer efficient to utilize such a method since his tank was enormous and his abilities consumed significant amounts with each pop. He is telling you that you can't drag this fight into a draw even if you wanted. Thor remarked with his eyes narrowed. I am still not interested in playing by his rules. Felix expressed coldly, I am no longer in a position where I allow myself to get tested against my will. Felix desired Lord Marduk's help, but only if he treated him as a peer. He had demonstrated that his spiritual pressure was higher than him, so that was already enough to put a stop to such shenanigans and sit with him to continue their deal. But, Lord Marduk created this chessboard and wanted Felix to dance in those realities like his acceptance was the most desirable thing in this universe. *CK off. He thought. Just as Lord Marduk began constructing another chessboard, Felix interrupted him indifferently, others can simp all they want for your techniques, I am not interested. Either we agree on a draw and sit this out to continue with our deal, or, I will leave this place and finish my meeting with the primogenitors, your choice. Who is he calling a simp? What does a simp even mean? Erebus and the rest of the primogenitors didn't seem too pleased with Felix's statements. They didn't know what he called them, but they could feel that he was insulting them on the low. Still, they kept their dissatisfaction to themselves, knowing that Lord Marduk was going to humble down his ego in a bit. In their eyes, there was absolutely no way Felix would leave this place unless Lord Marduk allowed him to. Since the entire galaxy was made out of his creation element, it meant that even the laws were on his side and the primogenitors had absolutely no control over them. In other words, no one here could open spatial rifts, void rifts, or any escape ability that would utilize the galaxy's elements and laws. You must be thinking of escaping through using totality collapse plus a spatial rift after getting rid of my creation elemental energy in the area. All I can say is, give it a try. Lord Marduk chuckled, causing the space to rumble as a supernova occurred nearby. Lord Marduk wouldn't be a master strategist if he hadn't already thought about this and had a way to counter it. Felix knew that he wasn't bluffing, so, he never had thought of using such an obvious method. Let's see if you can stop me after using this. Felix smiled coldly as he enveloped the surrounding space in his illusion domain, a realm where reality bends to his will. As the illusion domain took hold, the cosmos around them began to morph and shimmer. Within this altered reality, Felix summoned his black celestial flames, flickering and dancing against the pitch-black darkness. If it wasn't for the primogenitors having perfect vision, they wouldn't have spotted it at all. While the Darkins felt shivers course down their spine at the sight of these nightmarish flames, the rest of the primogenitors had mostly puzzled expressions. What are those flames? They resemble flames, but feel nothing like it. Phoenix, do you recognize those flames? The primogenitors turned immediately to the flames expert amidst them, just to get answered with a shake of the head. Those are not flames born out of fire. She replied with a curious tone as she watched the celestial flames rise around Felix. They burned with an intensity that defies conventional understanding. Meanwhile Lord Marduk, observing the flames, initially appeared perplexed. His eyes were narrowed as he studied the peculiar fire. What is this? He murmured, a rare hint of bewilderment in his voice. The flames did not conform to any elemental energy he knew or had created, they were an anomaly, a puzzle that demanded his attention. Then, realization dawned upon him. Don't tell me. No, it can't be. His eyes widened in recognition, and a deep sense of shock took hold. Celestial flames, he breathed out, the words heavy with significance. But how? I was told they were white and no one could utilize them besides those beings. When Lord Marduk noticed that Felix had created a spatial rift amidst the black flames and was stepping inside of it causally, he channeled the vastness of his power, unleashing a barrage of elemental attacks toward Felix. The cascades of fire, torrents of water, bolts of lightning, and sharp spatial blades surged through the cosmos, a spectacular display of his control over the fundamental forces of nature. However, as these elemental forces reached the boundary of Felix's illusion domain, they encountered an unexpected defense, the celestial black flames. The flames reacted not just to the physical properties of the elements but to their very essence. The fire was extinguished as if it were mere paper, water evaporated before it could quench the flames, and lightning dissipated into nothingness. The celestial flames burned through them effortlessly, their power extending beyond mere physical destruction. Marduk watched in astonishment as his attacks were nullified. This confirmed his suspicion as he knew that celestial flames were the bane to all elements and laws, even his creation element was nothing before it. They could burn through spirits, energies, elements, laws, and anything else Felix wills them to. When he noticed that Felix was about to disappear through the spatial rift, unbothered by the stunned looks of the primogenitors, he reached out with a sense of urgency. Wait! Let's talk things out! He called out, his voice echoing across the illusion domain. Oh, now you wanna talk? Felix sneered in displeasure. I will hand you all the elemental techniques I have mastered. You just have to tell me how are you using celestial flames? Lord Marduk offered mentally without nonsense. How do you know about them? Felix asked with a startled look, halting himself from leaving. He understood that Lord Marduk was extremely knowledgeable, but still, celestial flames were a concept only known in the Eternal Kingdom. Unless a Unigen informed him about them or he visited the place, there was no way to find out such information. Let's talk somewhere else, I think we are both done with this silly game. Lord Marduk suggested while opening a spatial rift at a near distance to Felix, inviting him to go through it. Silly game. He sure made a 180-degree switch the instant celestial flames were introduced. Felix and the tenant's eyelids twitched at Lord Marduk's attitude switch. How can I trust you? Felix said as he eyed the rift warily. I give you my word that I have no interest in fighting you any longer. Lord Marduk said with a serious tone, anything related to celestial flames is something I would not joke about. If you don't trust me, bring your masters and allies with you. In the consciousness space, everyone gave Felix a head nod, letting him know that Lord Marduk wasn't of the type to go against his word. Thus, Felix exited his own spatial rift and stepped into the other, knowing that even if there was some foul play, he still had to check. The temptation of obtaining new elemental techniques was too much to resist. Lady Sphinx and the tenants in the area followed him, having no plans of leaving him on his own. When everyone went through, the spatial rift was closed and Lord Marduk's enormous cosmic projection disappeared. Most of the primogenitors were left staring at each other speechlessly, having no idea how to react to this development. They didn't listen to the telepathic conversation between Felix and Lord Marduk, which made it even harder to accept that those two were just at each other's throats before they retreated together peacefully, leaving them standing alone in the cosmic wind. Cherif took a deep breath to hold in his anger and then asked his peers, now what? What else? We wait. Erebus replied in irritation, not too pleased with how things turned out. Most of his peers shared his sentiment. Who could blame them? They came here to receive information about their purpose in life and were shown that new elemental techniques were available. In the end, they neither got those techniques nor found out about their purpose. Even the bets were considered as voided since the fight ended with no result and no one was allowed to bet on a draw. In battles related to primogenitors, most of them end up in draws, which was unfun if everyone made a bet on it. Well, this feels like sh*t. Kumiho swore under her breath. The fact that they wanted vital information from Felix and Lord Marduk, two beings more powerful than them by a significant amount, made it even harder for them to do anything about this treatment. All they could do was wait patiently for them to return. 1579 The Elemental Techniques. Meanwhile, after the scenery around them warped and shifted in a blur of colors and lights, Felix and his allies emerged on the surface of a barren moon, the sky above dominated by the celestial panorama of stars and nebulae. Before them stood the giant monolith, towering and imposing, its surface covered in intricate inscriptions that seemed to pulse with ancient energy. Universal Codex. Felix murmured as he could feel the weight of knowledge and power emanating from the stone, each inscription telling a story of creation, destruction, and the intricate tapestry of the universe. Lord Marduk was standing before it in his normal humanoid form. When he sensed Felix's presence, he turned around and asked with a stern tone, "Have you sold out to Eternal Kingdom? Or is your body inhibited by a celestial being? Out with it, those are the only two options I see that can explain a deity using celestial powers." Even though the celestial flames were made out of illusion energy, he understood that Felix had to have utilized them once before for real, otherwise, it would be nearly impossible to copy their effects that well. The short answer is no. Before I can explain any further, I believe you owe me something. Felix replied. Lord Marduk remained silent for a moment. He could see that Felix had no plans of giving up on his secret without getting those elemental techniques first. Suddenly, Lord Marduk's voice, deep and resonant, filled the cosmic expanse as he spoke. To create and sustain a galaxy isn't an easy task, and I have utilized a combination of two techniques to pull it off. They are called elemental expansion and external neutral energy conversion. Interesting names. Lady Sphinx murmured, her brain already analyzing the names and coming up with the perfect effects that represented them. Lord Marduk raised his hand, and as he did so, a visualization of a nascent galaxy appeared above his palm, swirling with clouds of dust and gas. Elemental expansion, he explained, allowed me to reach out across the vastness of space, drawing in the ambient, neutral energy that permeates the universe without any limits. Hey? Infinite pull. How can that be possible? Isn't this a literal glitch, allowing us to possess infinite energy for eternity? Felix and the tenants were left absolutely stupefied at the sound of such an overpowered technique. Even the elemental lords were taken back, not expecting such a technique to be written on their skin for billions of years without their knowledge. It sure is a game changer. Lord Marduk agreed while pointing his finger at the inscriptions on the wall, causing a long sentence to be lit up specifically. The sentence was written as such: X% yen number, and asterisk and percent, SDF number yen at number yen number percent number, GFD percent yen and, percent yen, number at yen. Lord Marduk translated it for them calmly before they could ask. It read as such: Universe's breath, elements bend, expand my reach, to infinity's end. Universe's breath, elements bend, expand my reach, to infinity's end. Felix and the others repeated it with intrigued looks. It had been forever since any one of them had listened to another Universal Codex sentence getting deciphered. Since Lord Marduk hadn't given them the sentence's reading in the Universal Codex to recite, the technique hadn't gotten activated. The potential of elemental expansion is virtually limitless, allowing you to draw in neutral energy from distant solar systems, galaxies, the void between galaxies, or even the edges of the universe. Lord Marduk shook his head, though, the distance does affect this process heavily, and if you pulled from different galaxies, the neutral won't arrive until you have already forgotten about it. It's still amazing. Fenrir shared, all of us are forced to devour only neutral energy in our elemental manipulation range and field of sight, which is not enough for us. Felix had it worse than primogenitors since his elemental range was significantly lower than theirs. This had always created energy problems for him, as most of his powerful abilities were hungry hippos, always starving for more. For example, he could easily reach the size of a planet, but he couldn't reach the size of a star, unlike other primogenitors with size manipulation. That's because the neutral energy's range was on the low, limiting his potential significantly. The same could be said about the void domain, totality collapse, and illusion domain. If I had such elemental technique, I would be able to destroy entire galaxies with void domain or totality collapse. Felix sucked a deep breath. I can even put the Milky Way galaxy in my illusion domain and do whatever I want for my race. The possibilities are infinite. No wonder the primogenitors were desperate for more elemental techniques. Each one was a massive upgrade to their strength, opening new doors to new heights. Elemental expansion is good, but its true potential gets pulled out only if it was utilized with external neutral energy conversion. Lord Marduk added while highlighting another sentence in the massive monolith. The sentence appeared as such: percent, yen percent, FDG $% number $dollar number percent number $dollar number percent $dollar DFG percent and $dollar number percent. He translated, from cosmic void to my command, harness the unseen, shape it by my hand. When he said this, the miniature galaxy in his palm began to take shape, stars igniting within the swirling clouds, creating a mesmerizing sight. External neutral energy conversion was the true key to making the creation of a galaxy a dream becomes a reality. It allowed me to convert the neutral energy into my desired object without needing the energy to enter my body first. SSSSSSSSSSSS. Almost everyone sucked a deep cold breath in shock and a tint of excitement at the sound of that. They already had an idea of what the technique does after hearing its name, but to have it confirmed was a different story. Infinite reach of neutral energy added into external conversion. Doesn't this mean that the elemental range is completely negated, making everyone with those two techniques utilize their elemental powers from even different galaxies as long as their senses reached? Felix shared while his heartbeats accelerated in elation. Elemental range implied that elementalists could not create new abilities or control them outside of their range. Their abilities could be created inside the range and go out of it without a problem as long as the fuel was provided, but they could no longer control the mentioned ability. This was a gigantic limitation to all elementalists alike, and only primogenitors and such beings could be said to have somewhat reduced this limitation by making supermassive ranges. Yet now, all of that training to increase the elemental range, all of that pain and suffering could literally be negated by activating two techniques in their elemental cultivation system. Felix could simply leave a clone in a different galaxy with a wisp of consciousness and using his shared senses, control the neutral energy around the clone and turn it into elemental abilities. This was merely one of the examples of using such an overpowered combination. I don't know why, but I feel like we were never supposed to train our elemental control or such. Thor murmured, there must be 100 techniques engraved in our bodies, and just 3 alone made most of our efforts useless. If we have mastered all of the techniques from the very start of getting our gifts, we would have become gods in the first week. I have the same realization. Hormungandr supported with a deep sigh. All primogenitors went through a rough patch of adjustment and training that lasted for millions of years if not more before they had reached their peaks. If they had those techniques in those trying times, the situation would have been so much different. Now that I know we were created for the sake of their entertainment, I have a feeling that there must be some sort of a sick joke in this situation. Fenrir remarked coldly as he stared into the sky, give us the potential to become gods but seal it in our skin for us to see on a daily basis, just because we can't understand their language. When you put it like that, it does sound sickening. Thor narrowed his eyes frigidly, it's like they are telling us even when they bestow intelligence upon us, we will always be seen as ignorant animals, ***************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** Whether they did this to humiliate us or for some other reason, it doesn't matter. Lady Sphinx mentioned calmly, all we can do is not give them the satisfaction of seeing us affected. The tenants nodded with cold looks, understanding that the worst thing one could do to a spectator was make the show boring. The only way to do this was to remain unaffected mentally by anything related to them. Unfortunately, those are the only two elemental techniques I managed to decipher. I am still struggling with many portions of different sentences, and without any assisting data, it's extremely challenging. Lord Marduk shared with a deep sigh as he glanced at the massive monolith. May I ask, how is it even possible for you to decipher it? Felix inquired with a curious tone. He had tried many methods of deciphering his own inscriptions, but none had succeeded. He even asked Asna, and she told him that she never learned the 3 celestial languages as she was imprisoned too young. This had happened when he got poison inscriptions, and at that time, he merely cursed her out for being useless like always and ignored it. But, when he became somewhat of a pal to Lord Hades, he requested his help too. Unfortunately, some time ago, in the dimly lit throne chamber of Lord Hades, a place where ancient wisdom and the secrets of the ages converge, Felix stood before a massive holographic screen. The screen, glowing with a faint, ethereal light, displayed the mysterious inscriptions that adorned his body. Each set of inscriptions corresponds to a different element, intricately patterned and pulsing with an enigmatic energy. So? Felix asked with a hopeful one. Lord Hades' eyes scanned the glowing runes. After a moment of intense scrutiny, Hades shook his head, his gaze turning back to Felix. A seal has been placed upon them, a powerful one. It distorts the meaning, rendering them unreadable. As I attempt to decipher the sentences, they break apart, turning into a chaotic dance of random letters. A seal. Felix watched as the inscriptions on the screen remained frozen in place. If Asna said it, he might take it as a joke, but when it came to Lord Hades, he couldn't call him out for it. The seal is more than a mere lock, Hades continued, his voice low. The fact that you can see them just fine signifies that the seal was put in place by the rulers to keep Unigans from interfering in their little game. I see. Felix sighed in disappointment. Then, he lifted his head and gave Lord Hades a puppy look. Is it possible to teach me the language then? It can't be taught to anyone outside of the Eternal Kingdom. Lord Hades replied calmly, the rulers forbid it. Aren't you going against them too? What's the worst thing they can do to you? Felix raised an eyebrow in surprise. In his eyes, Lord Hades shouldn't care about their rules any longer after they participated in the invasion. You will understand why when the time comes. Lord Hades merely showed him a faint bitter smile before returning to his usual indifference. Before Felix could dive deeper into this subject, Lord Hades suggested, you should try that traitor. He has activated a divine array and it requires an extensive understanding of the 3 celestial languages. Unless the seal targets everyone in the Eternal Kingdom, he should decode them easily. Felix understood that it was his cue to get lost and not bother him anymore with this. I see, will do, much appreciated for the time. Some time later. I swear to God I am not lying. I can't read them. I can't read them. Duke Humphrey screamed with tears and snot covering his face while burning in celestial black flames. In front of him were the holographic inscriptions and they appeared jumbled and chaotic in his eyes. I will reduce your sentence if you decipher just one sentence. Felix pressed with an irritated tone. I can't. Sob, I really can't. Then, teach me the language. Felix changed his order. Free me from this agony and I will. Duke Humphrey swiftly accepted. Yet, Felix wasn't pleased at all, he could see that the Duke was lying to him to get freed. Since he couldn't use celestial flames any longer, the punishment would never be as sweet as him burning in those flames, so, he declined to make a leap of faith in his honesty. Why are you lying to me? Is it forbidden to teach it like Lord Hades? Felix asked coldly, tell me why. Kill me. Just kill me. Kill me. Kill me. Kill me. Duke Humphrey ignored his question completely and started screaming at the top of his lungs for a merciful death, but no one was there to fulfill his wish. When Felix noticed his reaction, he understood that he wasn't going to tell him. No, he couldn't tell him, and he had accepted this fact, which made him scream for his death. The three celestial languages, why are they making it impossible for us to learn the language and decipher our inscriptions? Is it some sort of a trial? A joke? How can we even decipher them without proper tools? Too many questions roamed Felix's mind, and no matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't understand it. Yet, what he couldn't understand the most was how was Lord Marduk able to decipher a sentence of it without receiving any help. I should ask him if I ever meet him. He thought as he left on top of the fallen monolith, not bothered by Duke Humphrey's heart-wrenching screams and curses at him. Back to the present. May I ask, how is it even possible for you to decipher it? With those. Lord Marduk beamed a couple of dozen rough-looking stones with some engraved wordings on them. Maniacal monoliths. Felix raised an eyebrow in surprise. Just them. He was already informed that the first technique was deciphered through the use of the maniacal monoliths, but he didn't think that it would be the sole secret of Lord Marduk's translation results. After all, every primogenitor possessed a copy of the entire transcription written on those separated monoliths. I wish there were more options, but nothing besides those stones can give me some useful data. Lord Marduk shook his head. The results are those three methods after more than 1 billion years of non-stop studying. Felix couldn't help but show some respect for Lord Marduk's resilience and intelligence. The fact that he relied only on his intelligence and the pieces of information available to succeed in deciphering 3 methods was an achievement no one could take from him. No wonder he doesn't want to share his elemental techniques. Candace uttered, I would be selfish too if I am the only one slaving my time on deciphering the impossible just to hand them down to others with cold shoulders. In her eyes, the fact that he had already shared an elemental technique with them was more than generous. Lord Marduk, are you interested in an experiment I have been seeking for a long while? Lady Sphinx suddenly interfered, though, I don't know if it will have any outcome or benefit. You want my monoliths? Lord Marduk chuckled. He figured out immediately that she desired to merge their collections. Yes, all the monoliths have never been in one place, and I think it's worth finding out the outcome. I don't really mind, but how many have you got? Lord Marduk replied casually, I have close to 30. I don't think we have enough. I have 130. Lady Sphinx interrupted with a hint of crazed fire in her eyes. That many? How the hell did you gather them? Lord Marduk was left completely shocked, having no clue that Lady Sphinx had been winning them in risky gambles in the games through Felix. It doesn't matter, I believe we have them all. Lady Sphinx said with a hint of eagerness as she beamed her enormous collection in the open. She didn't think that Lord Marduk would have that many monoliths collected and assumed that she would merely get his collection and continue her search for more. But now? The number was 160, which represented all the pieces needed to make one single enormous monolith. Wait, are you telling me we will be merging the monoliths right now? I have not prepared myself mentally for this. Thor expressed in agitation and a bit of excitement. None of us are. Hormungandr added with a solemn tone. 1581 The Gathering of Maniacal Monoliths. 2. Quick, let's put them on the ground next to each other. Lord Marduk swiftly began working on arranging the 160 broken monoliths. Each piece, a fragment of ancient knowledge, was carefully placed on the ground, forming a seemingly chaotic pattern that stretches across the landscape. Felix and the others watched with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Time passed, and a sense of restlessness began to permeate the group. Whispers and murmurs rippled through the crowd, a growing impatience at the apparent stillness of the scene. The monoliths did absolutely nothing. Knowing that all they could do was be patient, Felix questioned, does each monolith really represent a primogenitor? He was told before that each monolith represented a primogenitor in his element, but to see 160 monoliths in one place was a lot on its own. He couldn't imagine 160 primogenitors used to exist in the universe. That's what we believe at least. Lady Sphinx clarified, when we were bestowed gifts upon, the lightning that struck us, left some inscription written on the ground. We broke a piece of the ground with the inscription and kept it with us when our intelligence stabilized. Since everyone we have asked had this happen to him and we found a total of 160 monoliths, we assumed that each monolith represented the birth of a primogenitor. I see. Felix nodded in understanding, but if it's like this, how can you be sure that 160 is the limit? I have been sent holographic pictures of each monolith and I have pieced them manually until they got merged perfectly into one. While the rocks themselves have different sizes, the sentences were aligned perfectly straight, making the monolith resemble a book page. Lady Sphinx answered. In other words, it was highly unlikely that a couple more monoliths were to be hiding somewhere. If there are 160 primogenitors, how can the majority be dead? Felix still found it hard to believe that such a large number of primogenitors were dead with the kind of gifts that made them overlords. You have no idea about the dangers of the universe in our times. Fenrir shook his head. We spent at least thousands of years adjusting to our strength, intelligence, and powers. Just me alone have almost died 10 times by making stupid mistakes like jumping in weird dimensions and such. Felix did recall the first memories of Hormungandr. He was a mere little dumb snake before it got struck by lightning, and when he turned humanoid, he was exploring anything and everything with great passion. He could imagine a primogenitor in his earliest days dying from getting poisoned by a plant or a food. They might be immortals from old age, but they were easily killable during their young age. Plus, at least 10 primogenitors ended up dead after we made the pact, not waiting until Lord Loki had created the illusion world. There are a few more, who are still alive, but secluded themselves in separated dimensions, having no interest in the outside universe. He added, like the glass ancestor and plasma primogenitor. There is even an ancestor for plasma. Felix was slightly surprised. This is nothing, there are much weirder ones. Lady Sphinx named a few. There is Chaos Primogenitor, capable of controlling the mysterious powers of unpredictability and forces of disorder. There is the Nebula Primogenitor, she can manipulate the cosmic dust and gases. There is even a radiation, magnetism, and ether primogenitor. For each peculiar element, there is a primogenitor for it. But, unfortunately, they have not survived the earliest years and have not left any descendants, which completely killed off their elements from making the light of the day. Damn, I wonder if the universe has created eggs to replace them and maintain their elemental manipulation, Felix said. Felix wouldn't mind a perfect manipulation of some of those elements, having a strong feeling that they could be quite powerful like vibration element. But, if it was like they said and they have died way earlier than even the primogenitor's era could pop off, then there wasn't much of a hope unless he got super lucky. Plus, he didn't even know if the universe created eggs for primogenitors who had yet to leave a drastic change. For example, Carbuncle spread his seeds far and wide until there were many gemstone species and beasts related to him, which maybe pushed the universe to fix an imbalance he left behind, but, the same couldn't be said about vibration and other dead or lost ones. I think it's a failure. Lord Cow suddenly interjected. Let's give it some time. Lady Sphinx frowned. She knew that nothing was guaranteed to occur while bringing those monoliths together, but still, she held on to a bit of hope that the result wouldn't be this disappointing. Alas, they had waited and waited, the monoliths stayed unmoving akin to any ordinary stones. Just as the tension reached its peak, Lord Marduk suggested, maybe, they needed to get activated. How so? Let's see if this works. Lord Marduk said a single word in the Universal Codex language, activate. The simplicity of the command belied its power. At Marduk's utterance, a profound change swept over the monoliths. They started to levitate, rising from the ground as if imbued with a life of their own. The hell, it worked. Felix and the rest were left speechless, having no idea what Lord Marduk had done. A ballet of stone ensued, each piece gracefully moving through the air, guided by an unseen force. The dance of the monoliths was mesmerizing, a display of cosmic choreography that defied explanation. It's happening, it's actually happening. Lady Sphinx's pupils widened in elation and agitation. It had been a long time since she felt this way, and the scene before her was enough to make her cry if she wasn't in control of her emotions. Who could blame her? She had been collecting them for millions of years and had risked way too much for their sake. Gradually, the fragments started to converge. In a few moments at best, the individual pieces, once broken and disparate, fused to form a single, massive monolith. This newly formed structure stood tall and imposing, its surface alive with the dance of inscriptions. The letters are jumping from one monolith to another, forming new words and sentences. Felix exclaimed as he watched the inscriptions jumbled together. Upon the monolith, the random inscriptions from before started to move, swirling and coalescing into coherent patterns and sequences. The once chaotic symbols found harmony, creating a tapestry of knowledge that stretched across the stone's vast surface. Lord Marduk, his eyes fixed on the monolith, started to murmur, "Now, I understand, now, I understand." His voice was a mix of awe and revelation. As the inscriptions revealed their secrets to him, it was like he was blind before and now he could finally see. Meanwhile, Felix and the rest were still not as affected. They never really understood the previous inscriptions and those new ones seemed just as foreign. "I have wasted an entire billion years using the wrong data for my translation." Lord Marduk didn't know whether to cry or laugh. With just one glance, all of the unsolved questions that had caused him great headaches for millions of years were answered. The monolith was like a cheat code to understand the Universal Codex language as a whole, and he was using a wrong version of it, which didn't just feed him false information, but misled him many times over his journey. All of this because he believed the inscriptions on the monoliths were the right ones. "Oh, I understand now, I understand how it is." Lord Marduk suddenly broke into laughter, causing everyone nearby to give him weird looks. "What are you on about?" Fenrir asked in confusion. "I think I know what he means." Lady Sphinx shared coldly, "Those beings gave each of us a part of the key to understand our inscriptions, but they knew that most of us won't hand our most precious object following our birth so easily." "Are you saying they gave us incentives to fight each other to collect those monoliths?" "Yes." Lady Sphinx nodded. "If we cheated and copied just the inscription without possessing all the monoliths in one place, we will get the wrong version of it." 1582 Altering Lord Marduk's perception of him. "You guys didn't know that and considered the false inscriptions to be the real thing, making you consider these monoliths to merely have a sentimental value, nothing more, nothing less," Felix disclosed. Lady Sphinx and the others nodded in agreement. "At that period, we were already fighting with each other in many situations, so the last thing we had in mind was to collect those monoliths through aggression," Fenrir mentioned. "The Primogenitors' era wasn't peaceful in the slightest, with the entire universe being placed in a constant war between the Primogenitors and their empires. So, even though those beings' incentive to create mayhem didn't work properly, the result was the same. In the end, Felix came along and helped Lady Sphinx collect most of the monoliths through his battles. Whether this is their objective or not, it's not the focal point here." Lord Marduk uttered with a tint of eagerness, "I can at least translate 5 sentences immediately with this perfected data. 5 more elemental techniques." Felix and the others were left somewhat astounded. They were still processing the other 2 techniques and now they would be getting 5 more? These inscriptions are not mere writings, they are a lexicon guide, a key to understanding the entirety of the Universal Codex. Each inscription here is interconnected, forming a comprehensive guide to deciphering and utilizing the Universal Codex. To demonstrate, Lord Marduk selected a specific sentence from the myriad of his inscriptions and read it aloud in the language of the Universal Codex. Suddenly, the air around Lord Marduk began to shimmer, and a faint glow enveloped his hands. He opened his eyes, now glowing with a newfound energy. With a swift motion, he released this energy, and a spectacular display of the new elemental technique unfolded. From his hands emerged streams of prismatic light, weaving through the air, bending and refracting in a mesmerizing dance. Then, the light turned into a sphere on his palm and began growing smaller, yet brighter. Is this neutral energy? Felix and the others watched in awe, witnessing the birth of a new technique unseen for eons. They understood that primogenitor couldn't manipulate neutral energy in other ways besides converting it into their elements. Yet now, they were watching with their own eyes how Lord Marduk was condensing it into a potent sphere capable of great damage without it being turned into any element. From its translation and effect, this must be an external neutral energy condensation technique. Lord Marduk shared the inscription's translation: from the void's embrace, gather and form, condense the unseen into reality's norm. This is another banger. Lord Loki remarked, in combination with elemental expansion and external conversion, we can condense neutral energy before converting it, allowing us to create powerful versions of abilities almost instantly. Felix and the others thought the same. How about this one? Lord Marduk didn't give them the chance to discuss this technique for more than a minute before he already translated another technique. With a graceful motion, Lord Marduk began to weave his hands, causing the neutral energy sphere to turn into a brilliant fireball. Then, he uttered another sentence with the same peculiar-sounding voice, causing the flames to lose their fiery brilliance. A moment later, it returned to its original state, a formless mass of neutral energy. Conversion reversal! Felix exclaimed. This is truly fascinating. I feel ashamed that I have claimed myself to have mastered my element, Thor remarked with a wry smile, feeling like he was a student all over again being introduced to new stuff about his element. Granted, all of the shown techniques were related to neutral energy more than their elements, but still. Is there any elemental technique related specifically to an element? Fenrir inquired while gazing at the monolith. Of course. Lord Marduk went ahead and showed them another technique capable of boosting their elemental abilities' effectiveness. Then, another one able to clone the used ability instantaneously as long as enough neutral energy was in the premise. It was like Lord Marduk was given a fishing rod in a river filled with fish after he was using his bare hands to catch them. He just kept pulling one technique after another from the inscriptions. Some were unique and extraordinary, and some were basic and had a niche utilization. Whatever technique he showed, Felix could feel his blood boiling in excitement, already imagining the massive power-up he would receive. In the end, Lord Marduk stopped after facing some lexical difficulties at last that required intense studying to understand. I can't imagine what the universe would become if all primogenitors possessed those elemental techniques. Fenrir mentioned with a solemn tone. Well, it's not like they have to know. Felix uttered calmly, if it wasn't for their stubbornness to hold into their monoliths, Lord Marduk would have figured out all the techniques and shared it with them as payback. But now, Felix had absolutely no interest in sharing news about this to the primogenitors. In his eyes, Lord Marduk and Lady Sphinx were the only ones truly deserving of learning the techniques. Lord Osiris a little bit since he was also an avid collector and handed Lady Sphinx a significant quantity after he lost his bet in the Primogenitors Games event, plus, Lady Sphinx had promised that she would invite him when she collected all the monoliths. As for the rest? Unless those two wanted to be generous and share some of the techniques, no one had the right to get close to them. I have a better idea. Fenrir shared expressionlessly, you can use those techniques to buy their loyalty and help when you enter the Eternal Kingdom. Do you mean to bring them with me as subordinates? Felix raised an eyebrow in surprise. Why not? Fenrir nodded, you have heard about the Eternal Kingdom from the traitor. Being a Unigen is nothing extraordinary there as it is their land. If you want to compete against them, you will need decent subordinates. Interesting. Felix stroked his chin thoughtfully at his suggestion. He realized that Fenrir was mostly right, entering the Eternal Kingdom was the easiest part. Surviving in it and making a name for himself was going to be the real challenge. It wasn't going to be easy doing it alone. Elemental techniques won't be enough, they have to learn the truth and understand that their mortal enemies are those beings. Felix mentioned while glancing at Lord Marduk. Before looking at me like that, how about you hold your part of the deal and help me understand the situation better? Lord Marduk uttered with a serious tone, celestial flames, your confidence in entering the eternal kingdom, and your enhanced spiritual pressure, I want to know about everything. Felix looked at Lady Sphinx and his companions. They gave him a slight head nod in approval, making him understand that Lord Marduk was trustworthy. Before, he planned on giving him just some snippets of the truth, but now, he grasped that the only way to win over Lord Marduk completely was to bring him into the team wholeheartedly. The only way to do so was with the full truth. So, he condensed a memory film with all the key turning points in his life, like merging with Isna's soul, obtaining her core, allying together with Lord Hades, targeting Nemo's alter ego, and the list goes on. Then, he removed the memory film as a spiritual sphere and sent it straight to Lord Marduk's mind with a mere touch of a finger. As Lord Marduk delved into Felix's memory core, his form was momentarily still, his usually impassive demeanor giving way to a cascade of emotions. The journey within Felix's core unveils a tapestry of experiences, trials, and transformations so profound that they transcended Lord Marduk's vast understanding of the cosmos. With each memory, Lord Marduk's astonishment grew. He witnessed Felix's encounters with beings of unimaginable power, his battles that bent the fabric of reality, and the pivotal moments that shaped him into the entity he was now. The revelation of Felix's relationship with Isna, the acquisition of the Unigen core, and the monumental act of planning to absorb Nemo's alter ego revealed before Marduk like an epic saga. As the journey through the memories concluded, Lord Marduk slowly opened his eyes, now seeing Felix in an entirely new light. The depth of Felix's experiences, the weight of his decisions, and the sheer magnitude of his evolution filled Lord Marduk with a profound sense of shock, awe, and undeniable respect. Finally, Lord Marduk spoke, his voice resonated with sincerity, Felix, your path has been one of unimaginable challenges and triumphs. To see the universe through your eyes was to witness a journey of courage, sacrifice, and relentless pursuit of power. In you, I see not just a formidable entity, but a paragon of what it means to transcend one's limits and reshape destiny. I understand now why most of my peers are watching your back, I fully understand. 1583 The Unfiltered Truth. Lord Marduk genuinely admired Felix after realizing the hell he went through in his journey to reach this height. While death was considered the ending of everyone's stories, Felix rose higher than it and made the ruler of the underground his companion in crime. How could he not respect him? I appreciate the kind words, but I haven't planned for my journey to be like that. Felix shook his head. The stream of fate is just pushing me around, and I still have yet to gain full control of my destiny. In the eyes of others, Felix's life would be seen as an adventurous adventure with many ups and downs. But, if it was up to Felix, he would have rather settled down with Isna somewhere peaceful and cozy, living their lives in harmony. Maybe, just maybe, bear children to some rascals to light up their life. Alas, it was impossible to do this without freeing her first. Felix refused to live his life with Isna in an illusionary world with illusionary children. So, no matter how he thought about it, those beings had to be eliminated for him and Isna to gain their genuine freedom, and the only path to achieve this goal had to be this perilous. You know, Lord Zervan has told us that he saw a glimmer of hope in the far future to take them down without needing to destroy the entire universe out of spite. Lord Marduk reached to Felix and placed his hands on his shoulders. He smiled sincerely and said, I am starting to think he was speaking about you. Whether it is true or not, I will be honored to be part of your journey. I don't know much about his prophecy, but I have met him and realized that his foresight is infinite. Felix remarked with a solemn tone, so, whether he is talking about me or something else, I don't care. I will do whatever it takes to rescue Isna, nothing more, nothing less. Deep down, Felix also felt that Lord Zervan seemed to be manipulating many events that made him attain his current level. For example, he could have stopped the elemental lords from coming up with the plan to destroy the universe before Lord Shiva had invested so much in it and refused to back down later on. Because he did it in that manner, a significant chunk of the universe was erased, the demon race came to be on the other side, and Felix obtained Lord Shiva's manipulation plus Lucifer's evil energy manipulation. The Watchers were trapped and couldn't dominate the universe, leaving the dragons to become the superior race and give a chance to other races to arise and create the SG Alliance. With the birth of the SG Alliance, Earth was discovered in Felix's time. Instead of growing and turning into a wasteful young master of a business empire, his path shifted to becoming the greatest human ever born. Not to mention the fact that Lord Zervan was the one handing out the golden earrings to Felix, which possessed the only method to seal an actual unigen. Those thoughts were always on Felix's mind and he didn't know anymore what was considered an accident or a pre-planned outcome. It was quite freaky and mentally consuming, so Felix always shut down those thoughts and focused on what the next thing he could do. Whether it was an accident or he walking on a paved path, the result and his goal remained the same, now and always. Some time later, Lord Marduk had officially joined the team by placing a wisp of consciousness inside Felix's mind and accepting to share the truth with the rest of the primogenitors. While he was a bit arrogant and cared about his face a big time, he wasn't childish enough to prioritize it over a greater purpose. There was no greater purpose for the primogenitors than to obtain their revenge on their creators. Thus, after some planning and fine-tuning, Felix and his companions agreed on the best method to deliver the news while making sure its after effects wouldn't result in a catastrophe. Felix, accompanied by Lord Marduk and his companions, exited from a spatial rift in front of the primogenitors' assembly. When they saw how Felix and Lord Marduk were close to each other, they couldn't help but raise an eyebrow in surprise. Are they close buddies now or what? Seems like it. I am kinda curious about what happened in the backstage between them. Chatter broke among the primogenitors' ranks, each with their own opinion on the whole matter. Fortunately, Felix didn't leave them guessing for long. Felix addressed the assembly in a clear, commanding voice. The time has come to reveal the truths you seek. But knowledge of such magnitude comes with a price. It's time to pay up. Tisk, I guess he really was serious about it. Whatever, it's just some useless natural treasures and rocks. Shameless as ever. There was a moment of reluctant acceptance among the primogenitors, with a few grumbles and murmurs of discontent at Felix's blatant extortion. They each produced a spatial ring. Then, they sent them floating towards Felix. Felix received the rings, inspecting each with a discerning eye. He was pleasantly surprised with the quantity and quality of the treasures, not expecting the primogenitor to be this rich. However, when he reached the ring sent by Lady Phoenix, he noticed something unusual. The ring, unlike the others, was nearly empty. Felix immediately glanced at her with a speechless look. Lady Phoenix, her form flickering like a gentle flame, spoke with an apologetic sheepish tone. I'm sorry, little one. That's everything I have. I've spent most of my time in slumber, disinterested in the collection of such useless objects. Felix regarded Lady Phoenix, his expression softening. No problem. He replied with an understanding tone. Instead, I would like ask a favor of you. Felix had no issues with giving her the information for free since he was using her bloodline on Malik without her permission, but it wouldn't hurt to take advantage of this situation and get a favor from her. What is it? I have a dear friend who is using your bloodline. I don't want to bore you with the details of the human race cultivation system, but I would wish that when she awakens a wisp of your consciousness inside her mind, permit her to obtain your ultimate ability. Felix added with a sincere tone, whether you agree or not, it wouldn't change my mind on telling you the truth. Felix understood that asking for primogenitor's ultimate abilities wasn't really a small favor, so, if she rejected him, he would understand and wouldn't push for it any harder. Fortunately, this was Lady Phoenix he was addressing. Oh, I don't understand your request fully, but as long as it wouldn't affect my slumber, I don't care. I am thankful for your trust. Felix nodded in appreciation. Felix had nothing to lose by making such a request and Malik had everything to gain, so, he didn't mind helping one of his most trusted and loyal subordinates, not out of the goodness of his heart, but simply out of convenience. Are you satisfied? Can you tell us now? Sheriff asked with an impatient tone. Felix, with the calm demeanor that belied the gravity of his words, began to reveal the staggering truth. He told them that their entire existence, the saga of their creation and purpose, was orchestrated for the mere entertainment of higher beings, entities beyond their comprehension and reach. This revelation, that their lives and struggles were part of a mere grand spectacle, sent shockwaves through the assembly. The reaction among the primogenitors was visceral. Faces that had seen the birth of stars and the formation of galaxies now registered disbelief and shock. None of them wanted to believe Felix and some even outright cursed him out loud for bullsh*ting them. However, Lord Marduk and the elemental lord's unflinching expressions made them understand deep down that he must be telling the truth. The realization that they were mere pawns in a cosmic game ignited a firestorm of emotions. Anger, anguish, hatred, and fury ripple through the space like a tempest. Felix felt their rising chaotic emotions, but continued, unfazed by the turmoil his words have caused. He unveiled the actions of the elemental lords upon learning this truth, letting them know that they had plotted to destroy the very fabric of the universe, an act of rebellion against their creators. How this cataclysmic plan was thwarted by the intervention of Lord Zervan, just for Lord Shiva to commit forcefully alone on it and erase close to a quarter of the universe. When he finished his narration, the primogenitors were left to grapple with these revelations. I know that it's difficult to accept and you must be furious at the elemental lords for hiding the truth, but please, don't point your anger at them, the real criminals are those beings. Felix remarked with a solemn tone, we have a plan to take them down if you are interested in joining our cause. You? Understand? Are you f***ing with me? Sheriff roared akin to a volcanic eruption. If we were told the truth during our era, a dozen of our peers wouldn't have killed themselves. We wouldn't have spent most of our lives in depression or asleep. How could you do this to us? He roared again, but this time, targeting the lords participating in the cover-up. 1584 I am the ruler. We have been puppets in a grand design for eons, and they chose silence over truth. Despicable. Absolutely despicable. The rest of the primogenitors shared the same sentiment and no one could blame them for having an outrage. To find out that their most respected peers have been covering the truth for eons, watching them suffer and lose their mental battles, watching them commit suicide, watching them waste their lives away with no purpose, and yet, saying nothing against it. It was unimaginable and Felix remained silent at their tirades. We had to conceal the truth and you know why we did it deep down. Lord Marduk defended their decision. Most of you were acting like savages in the primogenitors' era, fighting over the smallest things, destroying planets and killing billions of lives for the fun of it. You were monsters and most of your descendants worshipped you out of fear more than respect and reverence. Lord Quetzalcoatl shook his head. Imagine if we came along and told you that your entire existence was for entertainment? I had no doubts that most of you would erase your empires and bring the universe back to its dreadful silence. Tell me I am wrong. When it was put like this, the primogenitors noticed that he was correct. Right now, they were pretty chill and peaceful, but in their era, they were a walking menace, believing that the universe was their playground. In addition, there were way more primogenitors active at that time, so it would have been nearly impossible for the elemental lords to maintain order. Still, that doesn't give you the right to conceal the truth, Kumiho uttered coldly. Also, you could have told us after we settled down, you could have told us during the pact, where we were on the verge of committing a collective suicidal. Erebus supported with the same tone, you had plenty of chances and you decided not to fill us in. That's all there is to it. I am starting to think that Loki hasn't made a surprising breakthrough and created his illusion domain right when we were about to kill ourselves. Jorgamo sneered, you must have realized that you messed up big time and tried to fix it by giving us another alternative. The elemental lords remained silent. Is that really what happened? Felix raised an eyebrow in surprise after realizing that Jorgamo had hit the bullseye. No one responded to him, which was enough for an answer. If you want an apology, then you will get one. Lord Marduk uttered calmly, but if you think I have regretted my decision, then, you, are gravely mistaken. I did what I thought was right at that time and that's all to it. It wasn't personal. It was personal to us. We don't want your apology. This didn't pacify the primogenitor's anger even a little, it just got them more irritated at Lord Marduk's nonchalant attitude after screwing them up big time. This isn't over. After realizing that he wouldn't gain anything from continuing this maddening discussion, Cherif was the first to attempt to leave the assembly. However, it wasn't going to be that easy. Elder Cherif, I know you are angry and upset, but I am certain that you won't vent your anger on the Alliance's citizens or its property, am I right? Felix remarked calmly. Cherif halted in his place, feeling Felix's subtle killing intent coursing down his spine. He slowly turned around and asked with a frigid tone and magma pouring down his eyes, is that a threat? Most definitely, Felix confirmed without an ounce of hesitation. Felix would never abuse his strength on someone who hadn't harmed him or touched upon his interest, however, if the primogenitors decided to act out on his citizens, then he would gladly accept their purities. So, that's how it is, hey? Yes, I am not in the mood to play games. Felix pressed coldly as his spiritual pressure went wild around him. The universe is under my rulership from today onward whether you accept it or not. So, if any one of you dared to demonstrate your muscles on mortals like in the old days, you will find me demonstrating my own. Most of the primogenitors went silent at his straightforward arrogant attitude, signs of displeasure and anger were written on their faces, but none of them dared to disagree or call him out for it. They understood more than anyone that strength was the only thing that mattered. At the moment, Felix's strength wasn't just ahead of them by a significant distance, but he also had multiple elemental lords and primogenitors on his side. It wasn't far-fetched to call him the ruler of the universe unless a Unigen decided to vie for the throne. The kid sure has grown to be a big boy. I don't think it's proper to call him little one anymore. Thor chuckled, seemingly pleased at the situation. If he wants to command the primogenitors, then he has to cast the little kid image away and show them that he is the boss. Hormungandr said. Even though Felix's strength was above the primogenitors, it didn't make him automatically their leader. They had big pride and they had never bowed their heads to anyone in their lives, which meant it wouldn't be easy for Felix to gain their utmost respect through conventional methods. Cherif, Siren, Erebus, Akli, Kumiho, and Jorgamo demonstrated this by walking away without saying another word to either Felix or the elemental lords. However, when they turned around and noticed that only 6 of them left, chills coursed down their spine. Elder Aspidicelone, Lady Phoenix, Cyclope, Lady Yggdrasil, Lord Dune, Lord Loki, Lord Osiris, Lord Quetzalcoatl, Lord Marduk, Lord Kaus, Fenrir, Lady Sphinx, Saurus, Wendigo, and let's not mention the dead primogenitors in Felix's consciousness space. All of them were on his side either as allies, masters, or unbothered by the exposure of the fact like Lord Osiris, Lord Dune, or Lady Phoenix. Without Felix knowing, he had already won over the majority of the primogenitors during his journey and accepted him as their own. This made those 6 understand that they were outsiders and if they ever had a thought of going against Felix's rules and harming the mortals, it wouldn't end well for them. You guys! Kumiho's expression turned slightly ugly. It is what it is, Fenrir uttered expressionlessly. Humph! In the end, Kumiho and her little group engaged to their departure, not wanting to lose face by turning around and joining the other side. Are you sure about letting them go without telling them about the elemental techniques and the monolith? Thor asked. Yes, let them brood over it. Felix replied calmly, when they get the news, they will come back running. Felix had no intentions of begging anyone to join his side, he wasn't lacking in having reliable people around him. Elemental techniques? Monolith? What are you on about? Lady Yggdrasil inquired with an intrigued tone. Lord Marduk beamed the massive monolith outside and said calmly, with Lady Sphinx's magnificent collection and mine, we were able to connect the monolith whole at last. When the primogenitors saw it, even Lord Osiris' deadpan expression was moved. The inscriptions, they are different. Cyclope exclaimed in disbelief. They aren't different, they are correct. Felix went on and narrated the whole situation to them, making them understand that the collected monolith was a lexicon guide and that Lord Marduk was able to extract multiple elemental techniques through it. He also told them that anyone willing to join their side against the Eternal Kingdom would be bestowed upon newer elemental techniques. Additionally, based on their performance and activeness in the cause, they would be getting more and more. Sounds too tiresome. Lady Phoenix yawned lazily while leaving the gathering. I don't need them or care about those beings, I will be going back to sleep. Felix's eyelids twitched, already expecting this reaction from her. No one is like her. Thor chuckled. She woke up, found out about her purpose, learned about the existence of new elemental techniques, and still prioritized her sleep. I sometimes doubt how can such a furious raging element be wielded by the laziest primo in the universe. 1585 Infinite Resources. A couple of days later, the primogenitors had returned to their territories, leaving only Felix, his masters, and Lord Marduk behind. After Felix told them about his condition to obtain the elemental techniques, not everyone jumped right away to take part in his battle. It was understandable as he was telling them to fight against their creators, beings above unigens in rank. Even if they were mad at their creation purpose, it didn't mean that they would throw their lives away so easily. Felix didn't mind it, giving them all the time in the world to think about it as there was still a long way before he could make it to the other side. Right now, he was sitting in a secluded chamber that resonated with ancient power. Lord Marduk stood beside Felix while holding onto multiple colorful mushed-up liquids on top of his palm. The task you have given me, albeit mundane, requires some time investment. I can't generate natural treasures without first understanding everything about them. He said. I understand, just go at your pace. Felix nodded in understanding. He knew that comprehending the essence of these treasures was crucial. It was a task that required patience and a deep understanding of cosmic lore. For each treasure, he must delve into its history, its formation, and the unique properties it embodied. At the moment, Lord Marduk was creating natural treasures that he was already familiar with for the sake of a small test. It was to find out whether Felix's devourer heart would extract all the elemental energy from the treasures in the same fashion as it was real. If it succeeded, this was going to open an unhindered path towards the 30th devourer's rank. Plus, it would have a drastic change to his original plan. Instead of randomly searching for new rare natural treasures now, he could easily crossbreed them in his illusion domain and request Lord Marduk to create them. It was the perfect combo to manifest an infinite supply of treasures. After a short while, Lord Marduk finished with the creation process, and multiple treasures were born in the chamber, emitting an exciting fragrance. Without further ado, Felix reached out with his hand and devoured all of them at once. When he closed his eyes, he felt a sudden faint surge of elemental energy getting absorbed and transformed into a substance for his muscles' growth. It's working. Felix broke into a satisfied smile. Good, I will leave a clone of mine to be responsible for creating them non-stop. Lord Marduk added, you also want elemental minerals, right? Yes, the more the better. Felix nodded in appreciation. All right, anything else? Felix thought about it for a moment and didn't know whether to tell him his next ask or not. It was a bit sensitive and overboard. Out with it already. I had an idea for a while that kept eating me up. Felix paused for a moment and then asked, do you ponder I can devour the purities of some of your perfect clones? I believe I will get an insane boost in my strength since they are similar to you when it comes to soul and body. This was indeed a bold request. But, it made the most sense. Lord Marduk's clones were different than Lady Sphinx since she was still using sand as a base. But, Lord Marduk's clones were different, he had to understand everything about himself, from his flesh, blood, DNA, cells, soul, and the list goes on. It should have taken him eons before he could make a complete study of his entity and manifest copies. If Felix ever went to devour such clones, it would be no different than devouring the actual Lord Marduk. Interesting request. Lord Marduk rubbed his lion's mane thoughtfully. It is a great idea to boost your strength for the upcoming battle, but I doubt it's going to be as much of a cheat as you believe. What do you mean? Felix was puzzled. You think I can create such clones with a single thought? Lord Marduk shook his head. Each one requires a great amount of attention, details, and most importantly, a massive expanse of soul. Seeing that Felix was still not following, he clarified, for each clone to be created perfectly, I have to cut my soul into half and put it in the clone. Then, I have to take multiple methods of soul recovery to fasten the healing process. Even then, it takes a long period before my soul fully heals and retains its peak. So, each clone is very important to me and there aren't many of them around. Lord Marduk smiled wryly. I still feel a bit pained at losing that one against you. I see. Felix had a feeling that it wouldn't have been easy for Lord Marduk to generate such powerful clones without any serious repercussions. He was right, the universe would never allow such imbalance. Losing half of one's soul might seem manageable, but Felix understood that it was extremely difficult to recover from that. Half a soul implied instant death usually, and if it wasn't for Lord Marduk's resistance and intelligence, he would have also ended up dead in his first attempt. Still, I don't care giving you a clone or two. Lord Marduk added with a solemn tone, you will need every bit of power up to take down that monster. A false unigen or not, he is still capable of playing to death if you weren't prepared. Thank you. Felix smiled in gratitude. He knew that he was asking for a lot, and Lord Marduk made it clear that he was on his side through and through. Let's start with your clones first. Felix said, I will be forced into long slumber after devouring the treasures in my possession. Felix had no plans on waiting until he could generate a potion to help him with the absorption. Now that he had close to an infinite quantity of treasures, time would be his only enemy. Obviously, he would still be working on it with his wisps, but his main consciousness from now on would be mostly in a deep slumber. Some time later, before Felix stood two clones of Lord Marduk, each a perfect replica down to the last strand of cosmic energy. With a deep intake of breath, Felix began the process of absorbing the clones' purities. His hands extended towards them, and a visible stream of crimson energy flowed from them into the clones. Then, a luminous and intense concentration of the clones' purities was extracted. As Felix absorbed their purities, a transformation began to take place within the clones. The lack of their intrinsic purity initiated an automatic process of demonization. Their forms began to twist and contort, their once noble visages warping into something sinister and malevolent. The transformation was both mesmerizing and horrifying, a stark display of the consequences of tampering with the fundamental aspects of a being. The demonized clones, now far removed from their original state, emitted an aura of malevolence. Meanwhile, Felix was living his best life as the absorbed purities ended up pushing his strength by more than 150 kbf. Much higher than the Darkins. Felix raised an eyebrow in surprise. Is it because Lord Marduk created a galaxy and is responsible for all creatures living in it? Possibly, it's hard to determine how purities exactly work. Lady Sphinx said. I ain't complaining at all. With this power-up and upcoming increase in his marks, Felix believed that he would end up at 1.6 million BF. All of this without even entering the origin realm yet. Can we each give them an order? I want to see if they will prioritize you over me. Lord Marduk requested with a curious tone. They will obviously choose you. Felix said. We will see. Both of them decided to order them to bow their heads to the other. After they ordered them, the results startled everyone involved. The clones responded to Felix's orders and bowed their heads to him. Hey? How is this possible? You serious? Whether demonized or not, they are still born out of an ability. Cancel the ability, they can't remain then. Lord Loki suggested. Everyone turned to look at Lord Marduk, waiting for him to do it. Unbeknownst to them, Lord Marduk was sweating a bit as had already attempted this and the clones refused to disappear. Master, what's your order? Master, what's your order? Lord Marduk's clones inquired with solemn tones while keeping their heads lowered in front of Felix, acting like their own creator wasn't even in the room. 1586. 2 decades later. Everyone was left speechless at the clones' blatant disrespect, feeling second-hand embarrassment for Lord Marduk. Stop speaking for immediately and don't bow no more. Felix swiftly tried to redeem the situation, not wanting to disrespect Lord Marduk by ordering his clones around. The clones listened to Felix's orders like they were God-sent decrees. How? How does this make any sense? Lord Marduk stood before his clones with a deep sense of bafflement. He could sense his senses were completely cut off from his clones like they were stand-alone people. This shouldn't have happened since he was creating them with an elemental ability, not a law-based ability. In other words, they needed his constant supply of elemental energy to survive. I think evil energy is fueling their existence. Felix shared. He didn't make a guess, he could feel the clones' evil energy attempting to suck off purities from the area to sustain their host's existence. It makes sense, evil energy is like a parasite that attaches itself to the soul. Lady Sphinx nodded. I believe if you ordered it to stop, the clones would eventually die out on their own unless you ordered them to self-sustain themselves through neutral energy conversion. I don't want anything to do with this. Felix addressed Lord Marduk. If you want them to die out, just say the word. While having 2 perfect clones of Lord Marduk was a massive deal, Felix had no interest in keeping them around if Lord Marduk didn't approve of it. It was too much of a cowardly move after he trusted him to join his team and offered his assistance wholeheartedly without pulling back. I don't care you keeping one. He shrugged his shoulders. You can use him to create natural treasures, minerals, and purities for you to consume. It will save me a lot of trouble of creating new clones to do those jobs. Are you serious? Felix raised an eyebrow in surprise. Felix knew that if he were in his position, he would never allow his clones to be under someone else's leadership regardless of his identity. However, Lord Marduk seemed to have a different thought process. It doesn't affect me negatively at all. Instead of letting them go and wasting all of my efforts in creating them, you might as well use one of them. He explained calmly. Why not both, if you don't mind me asking? Fenrir inquired. In his eyes, if he allowed one to stay, he might as well allow the other, which would boost Felix's upgrades much better. It's because he can't afford to have 2 significant pieces of his soul detached from him without being able to utilize them. Elder Kraken answered the question for him. Each time he split his soul to create a new clone, even if it recovered, it would never really be at 100% of its strength. The only way to have it 100% complete was through having all other pieces of his soul returned to him. In other orders, he could have a limited number of clones each time and it was too much to have 2 clones outside of his control. Lord Marduk nodded in confirmation, causing Felix and the others to have a much deeper sense of respect for him. In a sense, he was giving Felix an ownership of part of his soul, and all of them knew that he wasn't doing this out of love or politeness. No, he truly sought victory in the cause and he was showing that he would do anything to make it happen. Much appreciated, Elder. Felix bowed his head in gratitude as he gave him his word. I vow your clone won't be disrespected in any fashion. I already understand that. Lord Marduk smiled faintly. 2 months later. In the vast emptiness of space, Felix prepared for a monumental transformation. He stood amidst the stars, a lone figure against the backdrop of the endless cosmos. With a deep breath, he began to channel his energy, focusing on the task at hand. Slowly, his form started to grow, expanding exponentially until he towered over the celestial bodies around him. Felix became a moon-sized giant, his presence so massive that it warped the very fabric of space around him. In this gargantuan form, he assumed a meditation position, a serene and focused expression on his colossal face. In his enormous hand rested a crystal cup of unimaginable proportions, within which lies a mountain of natural treasures and elemental minerals, each one a rare and potent source of energy. The cup, 100 kilometers in size, was filled to the brim with these treasures, glowing and pulsating with raw power. Felix waited patiently for 2 months for the sake of gathering this much quantity. This cup held within it the collection of the primogenitors, his friends, and even his subordinates, as he had ordered Malik and Mr. Igris, his business empire's representatives, to purchase everything available in the market. This cup alone must be worth hundreds of empires, and I am about to devour it whole. With a faint chuckle, Felix brought the cup to his lips, then, he consumed the entire collection of natural treasures and elemental minerals in one grand gesture, an act that symbolized his insatiable quest for power and knowledge. As the last of the treasures disappeared into his colossal form, Felix closed his eyes, his breathing deepened, and he entered a state of deep meditation. This was no ordinary rest, he actively put himself in a deep slumber that would last years or perhaps even decades. He had to do this if he wanted to digest the massive quantity of treasures in the least possible time. As for his colossal size, he could maintain it even in his slumber, as he had already learned all the available elemental techniques. One of them was passive neutral energy absorption. When added to elemental expansion, he could remain in this form for eons to come unless the entire universe ceased to exist. While Felix had placed his main consciousness in deep slumber, the hundreds of his clones weren't going to halt working at all. Time went by slowly for some and fast for others. Before one could realize it, over 2 decades passed in the cosmic realm, a period marked by a few significant events. During this time of quiescence, the universe did not stand still. Notable among the myriad changes was the liberation of the Watchers race from their dimensional imprisonment. This event reshaped the dynamics of cosmic politics and power, as the Watchers, beings of profound insight and power, rejoined the universal stage, to reclaim their lost honor. This was Felix's payment to the Watchers King after failing to convince Lord Shiva to meet up. Even though Lady Sphinx had picked up his slack and made it happen eventually, Felix still felt indebted, and he didn't like that. Meanwhile, the Void Nation had achieved a significant milestone. They successfully gathered enough void creatures to manifest 2 more wishes, which would help Felix have 4 immunities in total. In the realm of creation and research, Felix's use of wisps led to the successful crossbreeding of multiple new SSS natural treasures. These novel creations, teeming with untapped potential and power, were entrusted to the demonized Lord Marduk's clone to be studied and recreated for Felix's utilization. Felix sure used them to the fullest, as he had successfully concocted the fabled God's Pillar potion at last, a feat made possible by Lord Marduk's recreation of the key ingredients. Additionally, Felix managed to create a new unique rank 6 recipe. While it was not the exact formulation he initially sought to help him with the treasure's absorption, it represented a breakthrough in his alchemical journey, expanding the boundaries of what was possible within him. There were many other smaller events, like Malik reaching the peak of her bloodline at last and obtaining Phoenix's remarkable ultimate ability, Nirvana Revival. It was quite a powerful ability, which somewhat explained Lady Phoenix's obsession with sleep. The moment Malik possessed it, she started sleeping for long periods too, since Nirvana Revival activated only during long slumbers. What it did was somehow self-burn the user until they turn into ash and then revive their bodies much stronger overall. This process could happen potentially infinitely depending on the owner's limitation. So, God knows how powerful Lady Phoenix was compared to other primogenitors when she spent billions of years asleep, going through an uncountable number of nirvana cycles. Meanwhile, after decades of slumber, Felix began to stir at last. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath as he awakened. As Felix slowly opened his eyes, a new power radiated from within him. The energy he absorbed during his long meditation had immediately been fully assimilated. With a graceful motion, he stretched out of his colossal arms, causing a shockwave of energy to ripple out from him. This wave was not just immense, it was cataclysmic. The nearest planets, caught in the path of the energy wave, began to tremble violently. Rumble rumble! Within moments, they imploded under the sheer force, collapsing into dust and debris that scattered into the void. That was quite a well-needed slumber. He yawned with a muddled look. 1587 fading out. Eeeeeeee. Nimmo immediately jumped from the void realm with a supermassive form, and sat on his shoulder again, rubbing his face against his. We were just hanging around in the UVR. Miss me that much already? Eeeeeeee. Fine, fine, I miss you too. Felix chuckled as he rubbed Nimmo's chin. Then, he stood up from his meditation posture and reduced his size back to normal. Next, he focused his senses on his strength. 1.650 million in total. So, I have been enhanced by a whole 460k more or less. I must have already reached the 30th mark in my Devourer system and about 26 marks in the Dragon's system. Felix remarked with a pleased tone. All of his efforts paid off handsomely and Felix was more than satisfied with the result. Still, he knew that this wasn't enough to reach Nimmo's alter ego strength. Lord Hades had already told him of Unigen's base strength and Felix could never forget how his heart fell to the bottom of his stomach in despair after hearing it. Around 20 million BF, primogenitors can't even surpass 1.5 million BF, yet Unigens receive 20 million BF as a mere foundation after their awakening. Felix smiled wryly, it's like the difference between heaven and earth. This wasn't even their peak strength. Unigens could also increase their strength through many methods. Felix was told by Lord Hades that during his battle with the Magma/Fire Unigen Hephaestus, both of them had already surpassed 50 million BF. In other words, their punch's shockwave was enough to level an entire galaxy with trillions of stars and planets in it. The only reason such destruction wasn't seen in their battle was due to the spirit realm, not having physical bodies in it. When considering how difficult it was to jump from 1 million to another, it was simply the unfathomable level of strength in Felix's eyes. Don't focus too much on their peaks. Nimmo's alter ego is extremely weakened and shouldn't possess more than 20% of his strength. Thor mentioned, so, you will be close to even. With how unique Sin's laws, I doubt it will be that simple. Felix shook his head, but, no one said defeating a Unigen was going to be easy. So, I am not complaining with those odds. That's what we like to hear. Without further ado, Felix went straight to the dimensional pocket of his Void Nation, desiring to obtain another immunity. In the heart of the Void Nation, Felix, Nimmo, and the councilmen were seen standing in front of the gigantic Void statue again. We believe this is enough for 2 more wishes exactly. Arthur shared with a solemn tone, when they get consumed, you might have to wait for another couple of decades again. The void creatures around the universe are close to extinction and now we are relying on the daily birth rate of the wrathful creators. Fortunately, we will be extracting 3 immunities from the dreamers, symbiotes, and wrathful creators, Candace said. It doesn't matter how long it takes, we don't have a deadline, Felix replied calmly, having no idea that he had just jinxed himself. Nimmo, you can go for it. Eeeeeeee. With a voice that resonated with the depth of the void itself, Nimmo uttered the wish. The air crackled with energy as the wish was cast, the void creatures beginning their descent into oblivion as payment for this monumental request. However, as he channeled the collective energy of the void creatures, a visible strain started to manifest. His body, a manifestation of the void's essence, flickered in and out of existence, a sign of the immense burden the wish was placing on him. Felix and the others didn't notice this as everyone's eyes were affixed on the giant fox symbol in the sky, devouring those void creatures. Meanwhile, the fluctuation of his form became more pronounced, a physical representation of the struggle he was enduring. It was like he could no longer afford to make such a powerful and complex wish. His body screamed at him to stop, but his resolve was steady. Through the pain and suffering, he finally succeeded in executing the wish. After the wish took effect and the void creatures had been completely consumed by the massive fox's symbol, Felix showed a faint pleased smile. 3 down, 4 to go. Are you okay, hey, Nemo? Unfortunately, when he turned around to care for Nemo, knowing that he got weaker and more exhausted with each wish, his gaze was left frozen after he witnessed a heart-wrenching scene. Nemo began to fade from existence, the once formidable entity, now drained, slowly dissolving into the void. NIMO. Alarm bells rang in Felix's mind, his delight quickly replaced by a sense of impending fear and concern. He tried to get a hold of him, but his hand went through him like he was a ghost. What's going on? Little God! What's wrong with you? Is this caused by exhaustion? It can't be. Candace, the councilman, and even the tenants dropped whatever they were doing and gave Nemo their full attention. The situation was abrupt and unaccounted for, leaving everyone incapable of understanding what was going on. As Nemo's form became more translucent, a sense of urgency gripped Felix. He realized that if he didn't make a move right away to make amends, it might be too late. So, without an ounce of hesitation, Felix cast a new greater time spell he learned from Selfie in the past decades. Total time lockdown. As the words of the incantation left his lips, a wave of temporal energy emanated from Felix. It enveloped Nemo in a shimmering aura, the colors shifting and blending like the surface of a bubble. The energy wrapped around Nemo, seeping into every aspect of his being, his body, spirit, and even his thoughts. In an instant, the process of Nemo's fading halted. He was frozen in time, through and through, a living statue caught in a moment of existence. This was the power of a greater time freeze spell compared to a lower one. Everything got frozen, causing the target to not feel a single thing, like he was put in a coma. Felix stood before the frozen Nemo, his expression wasn't good at all. He turned to his subordinates and asked with suppressed cold voice, "Can someone tell me what the F***ck has just happened?" The councilman could feel Felix's burning rage, which wasn't directed at them, but mostly at the situation as a whole. Everyone turned to look at Mammon since this was his domain. Mammon looked at Nemo with a stern expression and then at Felix. "I don't know how can this happen to our little god, but his ending is similar to all jinns who wished for something out of their energy and level. He shared out of his level and energy." Felix replied frigidly, "How is that possible?" Even Mammon couldn't answer him, knowing that Nemo was a Unijin through and through. Such a wish might be difficult for other jinns, but not for him. "You are dismissed, I will take care of this." Felix excused everyone and rushed back to the mansion while carrying Nemo with him. After checking on his well-being and seeing that his form were stabilized, he kept his spell active and transferred his focus to the tiny entity in his mind. The moment he opened his eyes, he noticed that everyone had similar solemn expressions. When that came on Nemo, nobody were messing around. 1588 Don't even think about it. Felix might be freaking out internally, but he kept his emotions under wrap and asked with a stern tone, "Any ideas?" Nemo seemed fading out of existence. "We don't know if he will truly fade away or remain, but it's not a risk worth taking." Lady Sphinx mentioned, "So, first, I suggest you leave him frozen in time." "I thought the same." Felix nodded. Unless he figured out what exactly was going on with Nemo, he had no plans of deactivating his spell. "Do you think this is related to the core?" Thor narrowed his eyes. "It can't be." Felix frowned. "Lord Hades has told us that even though Nemo's alter ego was sealed with the core, Nemo won't be affected by it since they are still connected spiritually on the same plane." Felix wasn't planning to devour Nemo's alter ego without first ensuring that Nemo's existence would be alright. Even though Lord Hades said that it was hard to tell what would happen to Nemo after he devoured his alter ego, he fed him some information about Unijin's cores. Most importantly, Unigens would not be affected drastically when they lose their cores like what happened to Asna, as long as the core remains in the same plane of existence. The only reason Asna was forced into slumber was because the Eternal Kingdom was considered in a different plane of existence compared to the universe, its realms, and its dimensions. The connection was completely cut off between her and the core, which weakened her significantly. In another sense, Nimmo and his alter ego both still could utilize their laws and powers as long as their core remained with one of them and in the same universe. What I mean is that he might not get affected as hard as Ansa, but the seal must be powerful enough to take a massive toll on the core, causing Nimmo's powers to get drastically weakened to the point he couldn't make such wishes. Lady Sphinx clarified. Even when he wasn't sealed with it. As much as he found it hard to believe, her theory made the most sense. If Nimmo was capable of still utilizing his powers while his core was sealed, it was only natural that the seal would affect him externally. I feel like an idiot for missing it out. Felix covered his eyes, feeling shame and disgust creeping into his heart. In his eyes, he should have looked into Nimmo's exhaustion of the previous wishes more thoroughly, instead of accepting Mammon's explanation. He said that it was normal for him to feel exhausted due to not being at his full strength, but it was a clear sign that something else was afloat. Knowing Nimmo, Felix understood that he would never reject his request or show another emotion besides excitement and eagerness to help him. So, even when he knew that he might not be strong enough to survive the wish, he still went for it to not disappoint Felix. How could Felix not feel guilty for being short-sighted? There is a silver lining here. Ancestral Immer mentioned with a soft tone from within his dimensional pocket, if the seal has become strong enough to affect Nimmo this hard, then his alter ego must be much weaker than we expect. True, he is the one sealed with the core, he might have shown a fierce attitude, but I believe it's a mere power play. Hormungandra supported. Weak or not, I am still missing 4 immunities and one of them is greed law, Felix said with a deep scowl. He can easily wish to reverse my immunities or just straight out kill me. Since Felix couldn't take advantage of wishes if he got greed immunity, he left it for last, but now, with Nimmo being out of it, there was no other method to obtain the immunity. Mammon and other jinns could not wish for something as significant without losing their lives in the process. I can handle other sins, but greed laws are on another level of cheating. He can risk falling into a long slumber if he could kill me with a single wish. Since Nimmo's alter ego was the one in possession of the core, he would be going nowhere if he wished for something far off his current powers, unlike Nimmo, whose existence was threatened. Nimmo might have possessed more control over the core before they got sealed, but since the sealing hall targeted the core, he couldn't have both. He had to either sacrifice his control or hand it to his alter ego and have him sealed. I doubt he will though. Lady Sphinx shook her head. If Nimmo almost faded out of existence from an immunity wish, I firmly believe the universe won't even bother registering your kill as an acceptable wish with his current weakened state. After all, don't forget that you have merged with Asna's core, which effectively made your social status just a little lower than a Unigen. When it was put like this, Felix and the others realized that she made a decent amount of sense. She is right. If the Paragon of Sins could kill Unigen figures through wishes, then, the Eternal Kingdom should have been under her rulership already. Thor said, without Asna's core, I don't know, but since you possess it, the universe might reject his wish entirely. All of them knew that the universe had a limit to the accepted wishes. For example, you couldn't just wish to possess another Unigen's core or to be freed from the universal shackles, etc. It does make sense, but still, it's too much of a risk. Felix held his chin thoughtfully. Do you feel it's possible to extract the genetic responsible for the immunity from a jinn and integrate it with me? Unfortunately, no. Lady Sphinx shook her head. The void creatures, whether intelligent or not, aren't born with a set of DNA like the rest of us. They are born out of void essence and it is energy-based. I don't know how the Paragon of Sins pulled it off, but I can only guess she wished for it and the universe delivered. I see. Felix went back to his believed process. It wasn't like he was being scared or cowardly, but he knew that the greed sin was just too much for him to handle. Even if Nemo's alter ego didn't wish for his death, there were plenty of ways he could play with him to death. Maybe it can be created? Felix asked as he eyed Lord Marduk. Forget it, I can't create normal elemental immunities on other people, don't even mention sins-based immunities. Plus, I have tried to create them for myself before and failed miserably. Lord Marduk shook his head. Immunities to the sins were nowhere close in complexity to normal immunities since they shouldn't have existed in the first place. Only the paragon of sins should possess mentioned immunities, but after she created the void race and released thousands of intelligent ones in the open, the balance had been drastically changed. So, even Lord Marduk with his infinite wisdom couldn't copy something that shouldn't have existed in the first place. Sigh, this leaves me with only one option. Felix smiled wryly. Without needing to read his thoughts, everyone figured out what Felix was talking about. Don't think about it. Hormungandr knitted his eyebrows. I would rather have you fight against Nemo's alter ego right now without the remaining immunites than request her assistance. Likewise, it's not safe, that crazy B*TCH is scarier than Nemo's alter ego. Thor agreed. It's not worth it, little one. Listen to your masters. Many other tenants supported their opinions, but some took Felix's side. I feel it's a danger worth taking. Fenrir shared calmly, if she wanted Felix dead, she would have already eliminated him before. She is invested in this story from the shadows and her deeds demonstrate it. I feel if Felix came forward with his request, she might not concur to it, but she will most definitely not harm him. But, didn't she say that she won't show mercy when he comes to her? Elder Kraken reminded. She did. Everyone was left staring at each other in silence. 1589 I know you are up to something. When they recalled Felix's interaction with the Paragon of Sins, she made it clear that knew Felix was going to reach out to her later on. She said she won't show mercy. Felix reasoned, maybe, she believed I would come for her after dealing with Nemo. At this moment, I am merely seeking her assistance. Felix, you can't reason with crazy, and that woman is too unpredictable, Thor warned. Unpredictable or not, it's not like I have that many options. Felix shook his head, I must obtain Greed Law's immunity no matter what. You should then consider requesting Lord Hades' assistance to schedule a meeting with her. Elder Kraken suggested, he will keep her in check. Instead of Felix endangering himself by entering her territory, this option was far safer. Even if the talks failed, no harm would be done. Let's hope he agrees. Felix reached out to Lord Hades like before and after a few moments, a spiritual mirror manifested before everyone. It displayed Lord Hades, sitting on his throne, appearing as indifferent as ever. Everyone greeted him respectfully and remained silent, letting Felix do the talking. Just as Felix wanted to explain the situation to him, Lord Hades raised his hand to silence him. I can set up the meeting, but that witch is too shrewd to be underestimated. She always has an agenda and I am certain she will gain something from either your victory or loss against the false Unigen. He spoke, I don't know what it is, but bringing her into your battle actively is a double-edged sword, are you sure? If even Lord Hades was hesitant about this idea, doubts of seeds couldn't help but sprout in Felix's mind. However, when he glanced at Nemo's frozen form and envisioned Isna in a deep slumber awaiting his arrival to wake her up, those doubts died down instantly. With her help, I will have a chance, without her help, I might not know how I lost. Felix narrowed his eyes dangerously, I have to do it, not for me, but for them. Without any further questions, Lord Hades reached out to the Paragon of Sins and connected her soul with the spiritual mirror. The air around the mirror started to shimmer, and the surface of the mirror swirled with a misty, ethereal light. Soon, the mirror's surface began to clear, revealing a figure on the other side the Paragon of Sins. Her eyelids were drooped, making her seem like she had just woken up from a nap. Hades, that's not nice of you, at least ask for my permission. She yawned while chiding Lord Hades. He forced her to show up. How overbearing. Damn, he is truly the guardian of souls and spirits. The tenants were quite shocked to realize that the paragon of sins was dragged into this conversation against her will. If even Unigens seemed unable to resist his soul control, they didn't even imagine what would happen to them if they offended him. Give him a minute of your time. Lord Hades requested expressionlessly. We meet again. Felix stepped forward, his gaze locked on the mirror. Miss me already? Was our kiss that passionate to call me? Paragon said playfully, causing Felix's eyelids to twitch in irritation. Can you act on your status? I am not here to fool around. Felix replied. Why so serious for a child? Loosen up a bit. The paragon smiled charmingly, but this time, her attempt to allure Felix failed due to his immunity. Resistant now? Not bad. She chuckled, not too bothered. Knowing that it was useless to fix her attitude, Felix could only move on and bring up the subject of the call up front. I know this is abrupt and somewhat weird, but I would like to seek your aid urgently. I need to obtain greed law immunity and I have already prepared the price for it. I need someone of your level to wish for it. Interesting, what happened to your raccoon? Did you already overtask him and get him killed? She mentioned with a curious tone. How do you know? Felix narrowed his eyes coldly. You should ask what is there that I don't know. The paragon smiled, but, we aren't here to discuss me, are we? Felix didn't know how to respond. He felt like the paragon of sins seemed to know everything and even this call might have been predicted by her. This didn't give him a good feeling at all, it was like he was making a deal with the devil, knowing that a nasty fate awaited him at the end of the tunnel. Don't give me such a weird look. Do you want my help or not? Felix closed his eyes for a moment and then when he opened them again, there was no more doubt. What do you want in return? It's nothing much, I am interested in watching you duking it out against that raccoon. The paragon mentioned with a faint bewitching smile, it's been a while since such an interesting confrontation happened in the universe. That's it. Felix raised an eyebrow in surprise. In his eyes, the request was pretty light, knowing that he could simply share his consciousness link with her to watch the battle through his eyes. However, just as he was about to mention his method to avoid any misunderstandings, the paragon added, of course, I have to watch it live with my own eyes. So, you either give me the location of the battle or have a wisp of my consciousness within your mind during the battle. This time, even Lord Hades was left speechless at her blatant attempt to insert herself in the battle. Whether she wanted to watch in peace or had other motives, there was simply no way Felix could agree to this request. You know damn well I can't agree to such a ludicrous request, Felix said coldly. You don't trust me. The paragon acted like her emotions were hurt. Not even a bit. Fair enough, our previous interaction wasn't the most peaceful. The paragon chuckled. All I can offer is a consciousness link or you can change your request entirely, Felix said. Unfortunately, this isn't a negotiation. The paragon shrugged her shoulders carelessly, you want my help, I would like front seats to the battle. Otherwise, good luck on your ass whopping, trust me, it will be one-sided. Felix glanced at his masters and the tenants with an irked expression. He didn't need to ask them for their opinions to understand that such a deal must not happen. In his eyes, the paragon of sins seemed to have been scheming in the shadows concerning this conflict for a while now. After all, she never made a move against Nemo even when she was awake. Plus, she created Lucifer twice and helped Felix devour him. It would be foolish for him to believe those were coincidences. What if this was her plan all along? She knew I would need her help and by inserting herself in my consciousness space, she might end up turning the battle in her favor and devour both of us or something. Felix said telepathically with the tenants. I had the same thought. I already stated that it's too risky to get her help, and this confirms it. We can find another method. Naturally, the tenants' reaction was as pessimistic as possible, with no one trusting the paragon to play ball and watch the battle with a popcorn bowl. You're right, I will reject her and seek other ways. Felix agreed with a disappointed expression. However, just as he was about to give his response, Lord Hades interjected out loud, not bothered if the paragon could hear him. I can't deal with her if she came in person, but if it's just a wisp of consciousness, I have you covered. Had I, you think too shady of me. I am saddened. The paragon pouted like a teenage girl, not befitting of her status at all. How covered? Felix switched to his voice too. She can't pull a fast one before I erase her wisp. Lord Hades responded calmly. Seeing how confident Lord Hades was, Felix knew that he wasn't messing around. Lord Hades wasn't a boaster, and if he said he had it covered, then it was covered. You guys, you think of me as some kind of monster. The paragon sighed, you think you would be standing here if I wanted you dead? Oh, I know you don't want to kill me, what I am worried about is the unknown. Felix replied coldly, you want something, I can feel it, I just don't know what it is. How about I show my goodwill, by giving you a mock battle against me, so you can understand what you will be dealing with? The paragon suggested with an innocent tone, seemingly really trying her best to fix her bad image in their minds. A mock battle. Felix knitted his eyebrows. 1590. A mock battle. A mock battle against the paragon herself is extremely good. Thor was the first to support the idea. It will help you at last gauge the true terror of the paragon of sins instead of keeping to speculate. Indeed, you can't skip this opportunity. It might be the deciding factor whether you win or lose against Nemo's alter ego. Fenrir nodded. I think so too. Felix and the others were also in favor of this battle. They might distrust the paragon to the bone, but fighting her would help him in the long run better than all of his preparations. Plus, I will even give you some pointers and weaknesses. The paragon smiled charmingly. I am in. Felix agreed instantly with an honest look. Madam Paragon, I am under your care. I became a madam now. The paragon's eyelids twitched at his shameless switch in character after realizing that she was too useful to antagonize. Whatever, do you want to hold the fight in the UVR or in real L? UVR. Felix voiced his decision before she could finish her sentence. While the paragon was actively showing him goodwill, he wasn't an idiot to trust her fully and get close to her in real life. The paragon already expected his response, so she merely chuckled and told him to send her the invitation link. This made Felix and the tenants feel a chill course down their spine as they realized that the paragon must have been logged to the UVR with a wisp for a long time now. Loki, how can you hide such intel from us? Aren't you going to stop with this stupid habit of yours? Thor scolded. Believe me, this is a first for me too. Lord Loki replied with a puzzled tone. Asna was the only Unigine logging into the UVR. I see, she must have lowered her wisp's spiritual pressure level then. Must be. Felix and the tenants were forced to drop this subject since the only way to find out the truth was by asking the suspect. They didn't want to offend her with questions for fear of irritating her. After all, they were still the ones coming to ask for her help. If she really had nothing planned in the shadows and wanted to watch the battle, then, she would lose interest immediately and leave them be. Some time later, Felix and the Paragon of Sins were both seen floating high above in the sky of Felix's private room. The land underneath them stretched for thousands of kilometers with forests, mountains, rivers, lakes, deserts, and all types of environments meshed up together. The room, usually a haven of calm, was now transformed into an arena where the very air seemed charged with anticipation. I see you have obtained 3 sins immunities: pride, envy, and lust. The Paragon chuckled. Do you feel safe against those laws? I won't say safe is the proper word. Felix replied, just a bit secure. Felix understood that the sins immunities worked only on abilities against him. Nemo's altar could still use them in his favor. A bit secure? How about we find out? In a display of her formidable power, the Paragon split into 7 distinct forms, each a manifestation of a different sin. The figures, each radiating a unique colorful aura with a symbol above their heads representing wrath, greed, sloth, pride, lust, envy, and gluttony. They faced Felix with a presence that was more overwhelming than the other. Felix couldn't help but narrow his eyes in focus as he kept analyzing each entity's level of strength. Alas, no matter how hard he tried, all of her forms were like a bottomless abyss, unexplorable and unreachable. The paragon, her voice echoing the multitude of sins she embodied, addressed Felix with a taunting edge. Choose your poison. I will use only that sin's form, evil energy, void laws, and spiritual pressure to battle you. She said, a sinister smirk playing across the faces of her 7 forms. Felix, his gaze sweeping over each manifestation, made his choice. Pride, he declared, focusing on the form that radiated an aura of self-assurance and formidable power, with the lion symbol above her head. He chose it to test out his pride immunity and to find out if having those immunities was really worth it or not. In response, the other 6 forms of the paragon merged back into the pride manifestation. I will lower my physical strength and spiritual pressure to yours. The paragon mentioned while weakening herself until her overwhelming pressure died down. Now, it seemed like a battle between 2 equal fighters. Shall we begin? The paragon asked with a faint carefree smile. Felix beamed his battleaxe and placed it on his shoulder while covering its edge with electricity. Then, he nodded with a solemn expression even though his heart was pounding like a waterfall cascading over the rocks. It was only normal for him to feel nervous as this was his first battle against a legit Unigen and he had no clue what to expect. The paragon didn't let him wait for long. With a confident flourish, she manifested a majestic lion pride symbol above her head, glowing with a golden radiance that illuminated the sky. It's a different one than the clash of prides. Felix immediately recognized that the inscriptions written on the symbol weren't the same as the ruiner's signature ability. Meanwhile, the symbol began to pulsate, channeling a golden light into the paragon, like a divine entity being bathed by the universe. As this symbol hovered above her, the paragon turned to Felix, her expression one of calm superiority. This is called Supreme Symbol. Each minute this symbol remains unchallenged and intact, it will feed me with incremental strength. My power will increase by 1% of my original power every second, continuously, until I reach my utmost limit. With a faint smile, she said, you don't want to see me at my peak. Dear Lord, 1% power up each second. The Unigens are believed to possess the potential to reach 100 million BF, doesn't this mean, with just this symbol alone, she can become the strongest Unigen in the universe? Isn't it a bit too unbalanced? That's my goddess, so scary. The tenant's expressions were a mix of awe and apprehension, fully aware of this ability's frightening effect. As expected, with or without pride immunity, the sin laws are still overpowered. Felix uttered with a solemn tone as he watched the symbol intently analyzing the situation. He comprehended that if Nemo's alter ego could use it too, then, it would become the focal point of the battle. As long as it remained, the paragon would grow stronger by the moment and his chances of victory would keep dimming. Some free pointers: if you managed to destroy the symbol, the user receives a backlash equivalent to the power-up received, plus, half of the power-up goes to the opponent temporarily as a punishment. However, since you have pride immunity, you won't be receiving anything. The paragon shared with a faint chuckle after noticing the dread painted on Felix's expression. Now it makes more sense. Felix sighed in relief even though he heard that his pride immunity was screwing with him. Just like him, he too believed that such an ability couldn't exist without a counterplay. The universe wouldn't allow it. Plus, Clash of Prides was powerful, but it allowed both opponents to gain power through it at the end of the duel. This went hand in hand with the logic behind the sin of pride: nothing was given for free, only those worthy would obtain it. Since Felix possessed pride immunity, he couldn't be affected either positively or negatively by anything related to pride sin from others. I have to make move. Realizing that his careful fighting style wasn't great in this situation, Felix decided to think of a strategy while on the move. So, without an ounce of hesitation, he swung his war axe and hurled it in the Paragon's direction while increasing its speed with his electrical discharges, causing its lightning tongues to manifest from its blade. This turned it into a terrorizing spinning lightning storm. Zzzzzzzzzzzzz. Boredom. 1591 A mock battle. 2. Do better. Yet, the Paragon merely slapped the spinning axe away like it was a mere toy, not leaving behind a single scratch on her smooth lavender skin. Switch. Unfazed, Felix snapped his finger, and his body swapped with the spinning axe, bringing him closer to the Paragon. Minimized void domain bullet. Not giving her time to react, Felix pointed his finger in her direction like a pistol and manifested a tiny pitch-black sphere, resembling a bullet out of the abyss. Then, he fired it out at the lion's symbol, wanting to destroy it and weaken the Paragon through the backlash. Not bad, but not enough. Even though the distance between them was extremely close and Felix's ambush was near perfect, the Paragon still managed to easily evade the void domain bullet. Not giving up, Felix expanded the bullet explosively from behind her, causing the real void domain to emerge and devour anything in its path. Using my law against me, how funny! The Paragon chuckled as she extended her finger at the expanding void domain. The instant it touched her, the void domain deflated akin to a party balloon and returned to its small size again. Here, take it back. The Paragon flicked it with her finger, causing the void domain bullet to disappear out of existence, and when it emerged again, it was embedded in Felix's palm. He had the palm close to his face and it was twitching from the bullet's released kinetic energy after it failed to penetrate his skin. Felix ignored the pain in his palm and cancelled the minimized void domain. He had a bad grimace on his face as he eyed the Paragon. As expected, void domain is utterly useless against her. Felix used the void domain to target the symbol and also to test if his control over the void domain would top her control. Alas, as the unigen of void laws as well, it was a mere fantasy. Now, that he had gotten his confirmation, he had no more plans of utilizing it against Nemo's alter ego. Time is ticking, I am already 10% stronger. The Paragon uttered as she touched her wrist, not bothering to move from her place. Not responding with words, Felix used his new external neutral energy technique to harness the energy surrounding the Paragon. Destruction blades. Felix swiftly converted it into an array of destruction swords and blades. These crimson ethereal blades, shimmering with a menacing aura, surged towards the lion pride symbol, intent on cutting it down and halting the Paragon's increasing power. The Paragon, however, was not caught off guard. With a fluid motion, she summoned void energy, shaping it into swords that mirrored Felix's. Boom! 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 The two sets of swords clashed in mid-air, engaging in a fierce battle of their own. The sounds of their collision resonated through the room, a symphony of destruction and void energies. Not enough. Amidst this sword fight, Felix shifted tactics. He materialized Agatite nuke bullets, loading them into a sniper rifle enhanced by hundreds of electrical rings. The rifle, crackling with energy, became an extension of his will as he fired the bullets toward the Paragon and the symbol with deadly precision. The Paragon countered with astonishing agility as she manifested hands made of crimson evil energy. Then, she intercepted the bullets one by one. Each bullet that made contact with the crimson hands ended up devoured and converted into a corrupted version of itself. Explode. Felix attempted to detonate the bullets externally. Alas, to his surprise, he found that he had also lost command over them post. Corruption. The bullets, now tainted with the Paragon's energy, fell under her influence. Damn it, it's like fighting against a much more powerful mirror of me. Felix was left vexed. Who could blame him? He couldn't utilize illusion elements, poison, void domain, or evil energy, and most of his simple abilities, like the bullets, would get corrupted and fall under her control. He had so many powers, but against the Paragon, she negated most of them, leaving him feeling naked. The worst part? She was using a single sin law and he had immunity against it. He couldn't even imagine how the battle would be if she didn't cripple herself. I can't give up so easily, I have one final move and if it succeeds, then this battle won't be a total disaster. Felix decided to shift tactics, choosing to engage the Paragon of Sins in close combat. He gripped his battleaxe tightly, its edge gleaming with a deadly light. The air around him crackled with anticipation as he readied himself for the confrontation. With a focused intensity, Felix activated his wisdom eye and the final level of truth vision. His irises turned pitch black while his pupils gleamed with golden light, hiding more than 5 reversed triangles inside. With Felix's current powerful mental energy, he was already capable of reaching the 5th level of his truth vision and keeping it active for as long as he desired. With the truth vision merged with the wisdom vision, his eyes and mind were now in a single frequency. The eyes allowed him to perceive flaws, openings, and intricacies in the Paragon's combat style, in addition to analyzing and predicting each move she made, turning the battle into a high-stakes chess game of attack and counterattack. You want to play up close? Why not? Recognizing Felix's change in strategy, the Paragon responded with a display of her formidable power. She conjured an incarnation of herself, a formidable entity manifested from a swirling mixture of void and evil energy. This spectral doppelganger mirrored her appearance and movements, and in its hands, it wielded a battleaxe similar to Felix's, a dark counterpart to his weapon. Felix wasn't amused at her attempt to fight him with his weapon. He gave her a cold look and then in a split second, he disappeared and emerged right in front of her face. As he swung his battleaxe with great fervor, the incarnation clashed against him in a downpour of sparks and energy. Felix, with his enhanced vision, moved with precision and agility, each strike and parry calculated to exploit the openings he perceived. Yet still, the Paragon was able to keep up against him, matching blow for blow, and turning her incarnation into a deadly dancer. Boom! Boom! Crash! The sound of metal against spectral force filled the area and their shockwaves were disastrous enough, mountains leveled, rivers flooded, and forests upheaved. They were fighting hundreds of kilometers away from the surface, yet, nothing below was able to survive. Meanwhile, Felix maneuvered with a warrior's grace, his battleaxe an extension of his will. Even when the incarnation was keeping it toe-to-toe, he didn't have a single thought of despair. He was instead focusing on analyzing the incarnation's movement and attacks until his mind was starting to visualize a visual future picture of their battle, allowing Felix to predict 10 moves if not more. She will block, strike with a right, evade to the left, block with both weapons and lastly, counterattack with a kick. The incarnation moved exactly like the scenario going in his mind, giving Felix more confidence in his battle. However, he soon realized that if he kept fighting carefully like this, his future predictions would be useless since the Paragon's incarnation would be able to overwhelm him with a single attack. The pride symbol was like a clock ticking above his head each second, giving him less and less leeway to fight freely. I have to commit, now or never. 1592 A mock battle. 3. Felix waited until he predicted that a small opening would emerge in the next 20 moves of the Paragon's incarnation before committing at last. The instant his prediction came to fruition, he swiftly swung his battleaxe and released an instant spatial blade at the Paragon's incarnation, forcing it to evade to the side and clear a millisecond of vision to the pride symbol. Now. Then, he channeled his spell casting through the battleaxe to empower it and activated spatial displacement at the pride symbol, aiming to switch places with it and his battleaxe. He recognized way before that the symbol, though a source of the Paragon's strength, was a separate physical entity and not an intrinsic part of her. He didn't know if this was a condition imposed by the pride laws to facilitate its destruction for others and keep it fair for the challengers or if it was always like this. Whatever it was, he took advantage of the opportunity. Whoosh! As he enacted the displacement, the air around him shimmered with the distortion of space for a faint moment before both objects switched places, causing Felix to find himself holding onto the pride symbol. As the battle axe, it was spinning above the paragon. Totality call passe. Without missing a beat, Felix channeled his ultimate ability through the battle axe externally and turned the weapon into a conduit for this devastating power, unleashing a maelstrom of destructive energy directly above the paragon. Simultaneously, not waiting to see the results of his attack, Felix summoned all his strength and struck at the symbol with his bare hands. His muscles tensed, his energy surged, and he delivered a blow with the full force of his physical and cosmic power, aiming to shatter the symbol in one fell swoop. Above, the totality collapse raged, a storm of destruction threatening to engulf the paragon. Below, Felix's raw strength was about to collide with the pride symbol, a critical attempt to weaken her immensely, causing her to fail in escaping from the destruction storm. One could say it was a masterstroke of strategy and power. Not bad. Yet, the paragon of sins watched with an air of calm composure. Contrary to any expectation of concern or defense, she merely smiled, an enigmatic and assured expression on her face. I have seen enough. In a swift and unexpected move, the paragon snapped her fingers. The very fabric of reality around Felix shifted instantaneously. He felt his fist, which was aimed at the pride symbol, slicing through nothing but emptiness, not even air was around. Hey! Stunned, he looked around and found himself engulfed in darkness, the environment around him pitch black and disorienting. A sudden realization dawned on Felix: he was within his totality collapse, the destructive storm he had unleashed through his battle axe. It can't be. This realization sent a chill down his spine, a rare moment of being caught off guard in combat. Turning to look at his previous location, Felix's eyes widen. There, in his place, stood the paragon of sins. She held the pride symbol securely in her grasp, having seamlessly switched places with Felix. The pride symbol, still intact and pulsating with power, seemed almost to mock Felix's efforts. The paragon's ability to manipulate the situation so deftly, turning Felix's formidable attack against him, wasn't just a testament to her mastery over her strength, but it embodied a higher realm of combat tactical means compared to Felix. Do you have any other moves? She asked. But Felix couldn't hear her as the sound waves got erased the moment they entered his totality collapse domain. However, he read her lips and he couldn't help but show a bitter helpless smile as a response. It wasn't like he didn't have any other moves or techniques, but he understood that it was already too late for anything to make a difference. She was already 30% stronger than him, which was an impossible height to climb. I guess that's it for this round. The paragon chuckled after seeing Felix's slightly depressed look. Don't be too upset, little cutie. Regardless of what strategy, technique, power, or even if you were 10 times stronger than me, you will never be able to defeat me. Much more powerful beings than you can even dream of have fallen under my feet. Felix knew that she wasn't being boastful, her powers were varied, her combat realm was an unclimbable summit, and her intelligence was just on a different level. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling that even that slight opening he had seen before, was prepared by her to bait him into committing and see what he was up to. In this way, no matter what he did, she was always prepared to counter against it. As for the switch in location, Felix didn't forget that he was capable of utilizing a similar teleportation ability called Blink when he possessed Lord Koa's bloodline. So, as the Void Law owner, it wasn't far-fetched that she could use similar spatial talents by manipulating the Void Realm. Even when Felix knew all of this, there wasn't much he could do about it. He was so limited in his attacks, that he felt handicapped against her. Sigh, you sure are one of a monster. Felix sighed as he cancelled his talents and returned the environment to normal. I am starting to feel less and less assured about my battle against the alter ego. He felt like all the power-up and arrangement that he had done was thrown down the drain. Still, he was relieved for the experience as it made him more certain than ever, that he was not ready yet. Don't throw in the towel too soon. The paragon appeared next to Felix and ruffled his head. I stated I am less confident, not giving up. I am doing this even if it kills me. Felix pushed her hand away in irritation, not wanting to get too chummy with her. The paragon took no offense in his actions as she found his resistance more amusing. Also, it's a sin to compare me with that raccoon even though we possess the same powers. She stated calmly, he barely has any experience in using his abilities, he is merely relying on his instinct and the details of his unlocked abilities. Compared to me, if you played your cards right, you might have a chance to defeat him. She is right, those two are two different beasts. Thor supported, it's not that I am saying your battle will be easy, but at least, you won't feel as hopeless here. The tenants agreed with him. They understood more than anyone that a combat experience was the deciding factor between two equal fighters. While Nemo's alter ego was powerful, they didn't doubt for a moment that Felix's last effort wouldn't have worked on him. In addition, Nemo's alter ego doesn't know that you are seeking to fight him or your new capabilities. Lady Sphinx added, you might even win the battle in the first second, catching him completely off guard. Nemo's alter ego already showed that he was planning to wait for Felix's death and the earring's destruction to be freed. So, in his mind, he never considered for a moment that Felix would willingly free him from his seal to battle him. Felix understood just how important key information was in such situations. All of you are forgetting the most important fact. Lord Hades interjected expressionlessly, who told you that he needs to defeat him? I stated devour his core through a SNES core and this doesn't need his defeat, just coming into his proximity and willing it, a SNES core will take care of the rest and you just need to survive the storm during it. While defeating Nemo's alter ego would make this process much easier, nothing was stopping Felix from ignoring the battle completely and prioritizing the merge. 1593 The Despair of Gluttony. Felix was already told how the merging process would go and it wasn't as complex as he had expected before. A SNES core would do all the work and he just needed to have a body compatible to receive the Paragon of Sin's blessing. In his case, he only needed evil energy and a great vessel since the most difficult condition was having a SNES core. I would rather put him out first, he might not be as great as the real Paragon, but if he realized that he was dying, I don't doubt for a second that he wouldn't take drastic measures. Felix uttered with a solemn tone. After what happened to him in this battle, Felix understood that even without the greed laws, even with all 7 immunites, he would still be in danger if Nemo's alter ego got cornered. So, he would rather do the process after he removed the alter ego's fangs. Is it possible to fight against the other sins and maybe a battle with you using all sins combined? Felix requested. He wanted to go through all possible outcomes, in his eyes, even if he never touched the Paragon once during hundreds of battles, he would still be the one emerging victorious. Maybe for a kiss. The Paragon replied with a charming and playful smile. Forget it. Felix's eyelids twitched. I am just messing with you. The Paragon chuckled while breaking into 7 forms again. Choose. Felix sized up the 7 forms and after some careful thinking, he decided to choose gluttony. He knew that the World Eater was capable of devouring all matter and turning it into a source of energy, which increased its size and powers, but anything else, he was completely clueless. He was certain that gluttony sin was in no way just this. As you wish. The Paragon brought all other forms into one form, which had an orange-colored symbol with a boar on it. Felix pulled away swiftly, putting some decent distance between them. Then, he narrowed his eyes in focus, waiting for her to make a move. The Paragon didn't disappoint. The air around the Paragon began to swirl with dark, ominous energy as she manifested 2 distinct symbols above her head. 2 at once. Felix gulped a mouthful. He never saw either Paragon or Nemo utilize more than 1 symbol at a time, so this gave him a tiny hope, that maybe, the universe restricted such a broken system by using 1 sin ability at a time. Alas, that was merely wishful thinking. The first symbol radiated voracious energy, symbolizing an ability that aligned with the essence of gluttony. As this symbol was activated, it started drawing in energy from the environment, channeling it into the paragon. **T, it sucks in both elemental and neutral energy. Felix's expression turned slightly ugly after realizing that his control over neutral energy couldn't contest with this pulling force. He swiftly tested out his theory by attempting to create an elemental ability externally. Before its completion, it fell apart and got sucked into the symbol. Yet, this was the least of his worries. My energy. It's getting affected too. His eyes widened in shock and fear after noticing that his elemental energy and mental energy were being drained against his will. He tried to stop the process, but nothing he did was enough. Like the energy itself never belonged to him and its true owner had come back to reclaim it. Meanwhile, the paragon was visibly being fed a stream of orange mist from the symbol, making her resemble a sun deity. This is called the hunger symbol. It sucks all energy in the area regardless of its origin or whereabouts and then transforms it into raw temporary power. The paragon explained casually. She was visibly getting stronger, as her power was amplifying with each passing moment. Does all of your abilities get you stronger or what? Felix didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He couldn't imagine how powerful she would be if she was using this symbol in combination with the pride symbol. He was usually the one with overpowered cheating abilities, and this was the first time he experienced what his old opponents felt. It was truly despairing. Alas, he had yet to taste the true despair. Come attack me, I have a special surprise for you. The paragon giggled cutely, but in Felix's ears, it sounded like a devil's crackle. Still, he knew that he had to start fighting, otherwise he would be drained out of energy and he would have no sources to recover from with that damning symbol active. So, he started his battle by taking a different approach than last time. He manifested 2 long destruction swords and covered his body entirely in electricity while also activating his truth vision. Hey! However, before he could take a single step forward, his swords fell apart and turned back into their original elemental form while his electricity died down completely akin to an extinguished candle. He stood there in silence, staring at his empty hands with a look of utter disbelief. Even the tenants were left speechless at the sight of his weapon's elemental energy getting absorbed by the symbol. Ha ha ha, your look is the cutest, I swear. The paragon laughed in amusement. What has just happened? Felix murmured as he stared at her like he was staring at an untouchable god. It's the effect of origin symbol. The paragon pointed above her head. It embodies an ability to deconstruct and break apart abilities in its area, reverting them to their original energy form. Felix honestly didn't know what to think or do next. A symbol capable of deconstructing abilities and elements to their original form? How was he supposed to fight? Go at her barbarically with his weapon? I refuse to believe it. Not willing to accept the reality before him, Felix launched himself toward the paragon while utilizing his own destruction projectiles, aiming at the symbols again. Alas, the rain of projectiles faded midair halfway through its distance, and by the time it reached the symbol, it was nothing more than neutral energy. I have never said this before at anything, but this is such a effing bullshit ability. Thor cursed in agitation. He could feel utter despair creeping in his heart at the thought of battling anyone with such an ability. Even Lord Marduk and the rest of the elemental lords felt the same, understanding that regardless of how complex their abilities were, they were still made out of elemental energy. Now, while Felix was trying his own best to break apart the paragon's relentless defenses with whatever technique or ability he thought about, she was getting more strong by the second. In less than a couple minutes, Felix was previously seen panting hard with his own hands resting on his knees, and forehead completely covered in sweat. His mental energy was devoured, his own elemental energy was drained, and even his physical energy was affected negatively. The worst part, the eternal flame in his own heart, which was supposed to never let him get tired, was utterly useless. That's because it utilized neutral energy passively to help him recover all of his own energies, but the paragon wasn't letting an ounce of it leave her domination. As he heaved ruggedly, Felix lifted his own head and looked at the paragon, who was glowing brighter than ever. A single thought came through his own mind: I am going to get my ass beat by Nemo, 100%. 1594 reaching his peak potential. Some time later, Felix could be seen sitting on the ground with his head lowered and sweat dripping down akin to Niagara Falls. His expression wasn't pleasant at all. It was an understandable reaction as he had gotten beat up by every form and every sin. Even against lust laws, which he had immunity against, he still failed to touch the paragon. To make matters worse, when the paragon used all of her sins combined, Felix got absolutely played, making him feel like a baby duck against a tiger. The combination of 7 sins, void laws, and evil energy was simply too overpowered. Nothing he did or planned worked. His arsenal of powers, his greatest source of confidence, was proven to be utterly useless. While he understood full well that Nemo's alter ego and the paragon utilization of the sin laws were going to be vastly different, it still didn't pacify his heart even a little. I am not ready, I am not even close to being ready, I need other ways to secure my victory besides my strength. Felix said with a deep sigh as he wiped the sweat out of his face. You poor little fella. The paragon teleported next to Felix and said with a look full of pity, I might consider giving you all the remaining immunities and training you for real against that raccoon. You will? Felix showed a surprised look, not expecting her to be this generous. The deal stated only greed laws immunity and she would still use her wisp inside his consciousness space. The fight will be boring otherwise. The paragon clarified casually, I am not interested in watching you getting owned without putting on a decent show. Is that really it? Felix asked with narrowed eyes. I don't care if you believe me. The paragon shrugged her shoulders, do you want to get trained or not? Yes. Even though he wasn't convinced of her motives, Felix wasn't in a position to complain. Let's get you those immunites first. The paragon said, tell me the location of the sacrifice and your wishes will be fulfilled. That's it. I don't have to be near the vicinity. Felix was taken aback. You think this is amateur league? The paragon flicked his forehead, just do it. Without further questions, Felix handed the location of the void statue to the paragon. But, only after he already switched his focus to his main consciousness and left the place with Nemo's frozen form. If it was up to him, he would have rather moved the void statue somewhere else, so he wouldn't give her the Void Nation's headquarters location. But, Nemo was the only one capable of moving billions of void creatures simultaneously. Plus, Felix wasn't in the position to make demands at the paragon. After she received the location's information, the paragon stayed silent for a moment and then said, you only have enough to make another wish. I know, I was planning to harvest 3 remaining immunites from the unique void creatures. Felix said, it won't cost much if it was like this. All right, I will pick 3 random ones for you. Without waiting for Felix's response, the paragon had already gone for it and got 3 unique void creatures killed instantly while simultaneously wishing for the greed law's immunity. The Void Nation's citizens and the councilmen were left bewildered and stunned at the sight of the greed sin symbol appearing again above the statue. My lord! A symbol! It's me, don't mind it. Felix replied while giving the paragon an astounded look. He knew that the paragon must still be on the other side of the universe. Yet, she was still capable of casting wishes billions of light years away. The most shocking part? It didn't even need to know about Felix's location for the wish to be granted. It's done, you now possess all 7 immunites. The paragon smiled charmingly, get used to them and study our battles. I will be coming back a month from now to test you again. If I don't see any improvement, I will be the one beating you up. Then, she ruffled Felix's hair one last time, and broke into light particles, leaving him no time to respond. What does she want from me? Felix murmured, feeling antsier the more she helped him, especially, when she was helping him become the new paragon of sins and replace her. I don't understand if this is right or not, but I have a feeling that she desires to be replaced and unshackled by the universal duties. Elder Kraken remarked with a soft tone. Everyone remained silent at his statement, feeling that his theory might not be so false. The Unigens were considered gods, but they were still under universal enslavement, making them incapable of truly acting free. In other words, if this was truly the Paragon's motive, then it made sense that she would help Felix in his mission. What will happen to her after getting replaced? Will she get erased? Have her powers removed? Felix asked, addressing Lord Hades. I don't know. Lord Hades shook his head. None of us had gone through this replacement process. It shouldn't even be available in the first place. Lord Hades understood that Nemo's existence was a mystery on its own, and if his original theory was correct, then, everything would line perfectly. Whether she wants to help genuinely for her benefit or not, keep your guard up at all costs. Lord Cowes warned with a voice that spoke of experience, never forget, behind that cute playfulness is the most evil entity in the universe, never forget. Lord Cowes was silent and hidden the entire time the Paragon of Sins was here. The others noticed his uncanny silence, but they refrained from putting him on the spot as they had no idea what happened between those two in the past. I know. Felix nodded with a solemn look. While Felix had never seen the Paragon exhibit any evil behavior, he still couldn't forget how she watched Lucifer get devoured by him with a faint innocent smile. She created him twice and made him trust her to be his mother and only ally. Yet in the end, she didn't bat an eye at his death. How could Felix ever feel comfortable with her? Don't put too much attention on her for now, we have to plan to take down Nemo's alter ego, and based on your performance, you aren't ready yet. Lady Sphinx mentioned. At this point, there isn't much for me to do, I have almost reached my peak. Felix sighed. Felix understood that only a few things were left for him to improve on that could make somewhat of a difference in his battle. Mastering more time/space spells was one thing. If he mastered the omnipotent time spell with Self as help, it might give him a leg up. However, in terms of physical strength, he had previously reached the maximum number of marks in his Devourer's system. Even though the dragon's marks were infinite, the resources required exploded in value too. To boost at least another 5 marks, which translated to a 100k boost, he might require 10 times the amount of what he collected in his previous enhancement. All of this was just for a measly 100k, which he was certain now more than ever that it would make any difference against Nemo's alter ego. The only way forward is to break through the origin realm and unlock my full potential. Felix sighed, but, I can't do that if I desire to ascend. How about an assistance from an outsider? Ramongandra suggested. Don't tell me you are talking about her again. Felix knew immediately what he was referring to, since there weren't many powerful beings in the universe capable of rivaling Nemo's current state. It was none other than Mother Siamese. If we took the battle to her environment, we would receive a massive advantage, and if she decided to participate in the fight, it's even better. Thor supported, her consciousness pressure might not rival Unigen's, but against Nemo's current state, she won't be a liability. I know, I understand all of that, but you are forgetting one important fact. Felix smiled wryly. She hates my guts for some reason, and without Asna's assistance this time, she will spit at me for even daring to consider asking for her help. If it's just a bit of spit, I believe it's worth the risk. Thor chuckled with some of the tenants. You guys, fine, my face is thick anyway. In the end, Felix agreed to the suggestion, knowing that there was no such a thing as shame or humiliation when it came to saving his beloved. If it was up to him, he would ask anyone for assistance instead of taking Nemo's alter ego alone. Alas, only gods could subdue gods. Meanwhile, at the depth of the void realm in the previous demonic realm, a spiritual mirror manifested akin to a mirage. Following its emergence, 2 massive pink eyes manifested in front of it. Seems like my actions have alarmed them. The Paragon sneered as she eyed the surface of the mirror, shimmering for a moment before revealing the images of 3 celestial beings of extraordinary radiance. The rulers gazed upon the Paragon of Sins with an air of solemnity and authority. Their luminous forms flickered and danced, casting an otherworldly light upon the pitch darkness of the void. The rulers' voices resonated from the mirror, clear and powerful. Lilith, what are you doing? Your actions stray from the orders we have bestowed upon you. 1595 Getting an outsider's assistance. Another added, your rightful place is among us, in the upper celestial ranks. If you no longer desire to return to your esteemed position, speak now. The air was thick with tension, the weight of the ruler's words hanging heavily on the paragon's mind. Yet, she remained unfazed, her expression unreadable. You want the core. You will get the core. Don't bother yourselves with my methods. The paragon assured with an indifferent tone. This is your last chance to redeem yourself, Lilith. The first ruler warned with a stern tone, if you fail to retrieve Asna's core, you will remain banished for eternity. The fact that we are giving you a second chance after what you tried to do to the universe's heart is already a... Stop yapping already, I said I had it covered. Now, beat it, before Hades finds out. The paragon Lilith interrupted them disrespectfully and then waved her hand at the mirror, causing it to break apart. Do not disappoint. The rulers still tried to chip in one last remark before the mirror fell apart. Those old fogies think that their method is the true way to freedom. The paragon sneered, what a joke, there is only one path and I am treading on it. I will see it through until the end even if it kills me. One could only imagine what happened between the paragon of sins and the three rulers for them to be at odds with each other and even resulting in the paragon's banishment. Fortunately, the Eternal Kingdom's gate lacks enough celestial energy to be opened externally and they are forced to use me instead of sending their lackeys. The paragon smiled in a sinister manner as she looked above. I don't know if this was planned by you two or a coincidence, I ain't complaining. A week later, Felix arrived at the same wormhole, leading to the elemental galaxy. The area around it was as populated as ever with cargo ships, troops, and elementals of all types of shapes and sizes. The moment he stationed his spaceship in front of the wormhole, Elder Hymir reached out to him telepathically. Boy, you sure have changed a lot since I have last seen you. He said with a tone of marvel. Stuff happened, it's good to see you too. Felix replied calmly, I am here to have a meeting with Mother Siamese. Does she know about it? Is it any of your business? No. Then, let us in. Without any further questions asked, Elder Hymir gave them access to the elemental galaxy. He could feel that Felix's strength was way higher than primogenitor's, making it harder for him to oppose him. Since Felix was allowed permanent access to the elemental galaxy, he couldn't stop him even if he wanted to. Mother, the little demon is here to see you. Obviously, he didn't hesitate to snitch. I know. Mother Siamese replied calmly as she watched Felix enter her territory. When she gazed deeper into his soul, Felix spotted her immediately and stopped her attempts by placing a mental blockade. It's not so polite to peer without permission, I guess you owe me one now. Felix sent this shameless message as public telepathic waves, knowing the Mother Siamese would capture and receive it. Mother Siamese ignored his remark and asked coldly, why are you here? I can smell trouble reeking out of you. How many times do I have to send you away to understand that I want nothing to do with you? Come on, don't be like that. Felix tried to get chummy with her, how about we start a new slate? I have no idea what I did to offend you, but I apologize for it. I don't need a reason to dislike someone. Mother Siamese replied coldly, I know you want something from me, you always do. I am not giving you anything, just stop making a fool of yourself and leave. Damn, she is a tough nut to crack. Thor said with an annoyed tone. I didn't think she would be this stubborn. Did Felix kill her family in his past life or something? Why is she like this? Candace commentated with a puzzled look. Who knows, maybe she just doesn't want Felix's problems to affect her peace with Lord Zervan. Ramongandra said. Well, Mother Siamese did condition Felix to never visit or request any favor from Lord Zervan, so, his theory might be true. Knowing that using himself wasn't too convincing, Felix requested for Asna's sake. Listen, I have no clue about your relationship with Asna, but since you have given me permanent access after you articulated with her last time, I assume that something favorable is going on between you two. At this moment, Asna is slumbering under the three rulers' imprisonment and the only way to help her is by going there personally. I need a little bit of your help to make it happen. Felix beseeched with a solemn tone, don't do it for me, do it for Asna. She was captured. No wonder I couldn't sense her existence in you anymore. For Mother Siamese was taken aback. Even though she was the consciousness of an entire galaxy, such information didn't reach her unless Lord Zervan informed her about it. Yes, and I require to become a Unigen to save her. If you help me out, I promise that I will never forget this debt until the day the universe perishes. Felix stressed. Felix wasn't much of a beggar, but desperate times require desperate measures. If he had to lower his ego and pride to beg for assistance to save Asna, so be it. Before I decide, what do you exactly need from me? For Mother Siamese was smart enough to not make any abrupt decisions. Now that Asna was captured, her deal with her was in jeopardy. She promised her when she returned to her duties, she would not treat her by the universal rules. For Mother Siamese understood that if she did so, her life could be considered to be finished. It's not really too difficult, I will need you to. Felix went on and narrated the situation to her, letting her understand that he desired to become the new paragon of sins through Nemo's alter ego. He even so told her about their plan and her part in it. You want me to team up with you against a weakened Unigen? That's your simple request. For Mother Siamese's eyelids twitched inside her field of dandelions. I will be doing most of the work, I will need your assistance to hold him down during the merging process, and additionally to help us set up a better home ground, cough. Even Felix started to feel a bit embarrassed at his blatant attempt to make light of the situation. He understood that if he was in her place, he wouldn't get involved in such a mess unless he truly had something to gain. In his eyes, for Mother Siamese had nothing to gain but a bit of goodwill from Asna and him while everything to lose by antagonizing the new paragon of sins. It wasn't far-fetched that Nemo's alter ego would destroy the entire galaxy as an act of revenge if they failed. Unbeknownst to him, for Mother Siamese did have something to gain from this and was genuinely considering the request. If Asna was saved, she will keep her promise. But, this isn't enough, I can use her to gain true detachment and be free to go anywhere I want with my lord. For Mother Siamese closed her eyes for a moment, seemingly a bit hesitant, but, is it worth the risk? When For Mother Siamese thought about how Lord Zervan refused to depart her galaxy to be by her side at all times, she immediately ironed her will, it is. Please, take your time to think of. Before Felix could finish his sentence, For Mother Siamese replied with a serious tone, I will require a favor from Asna if I help you and this leads to her freedom. Of course. I will see it through and even so give you my word that Asna won't let you down. Felix instantly agreed to her condition, not caring that he was accepting a favor in Asna's stead. Knowing Asna's assholish nature, he had a big feeling that she might ignore For Mother Siamese's favor since she wasn't the one accepting it. But he had no plans to inform her about this. 1596 Releasing the seal. After For Mother Siamese was brought in successfully, Felix resolved to spend the next years of his life in the elemental galaxy. He asked for Mother Siamese to help him with elemental minerals to improve his strength. While she was irritated by his constant requests, she caved in and helped him out, knowing that there was no room for failure. With her assistants and his subordinates doing their due diligence outside, he was receiving a decent amount each year. This was a mere bonus while he was spending his time getting trained by the Paragon of Sins and Selfie. Fortunately, he had his wisdom eye, which helped him reduce the learning stage immensely. However, nothing was going to help against the Paragon of Sin. Felix had spent more than a millennial getting beaten out of his wits every month until he became numb to it. While he never touched the Paragon, his understanding of the sin laws was getting better and better until he genuinely started to create some tough times for the paragon. Obviously, it wasn't when she was utilizing all 7 sins, as she was simply untouchable at that level. Together, they explored the depths of evil energy, void manipulation, and the intricate nuances of combat against beings of immense power. As the millennia passed, Felix's prowess grew exponentially, each technique was honed to perfection, and every strategy was scrutinized and refined. He even attempted to understand the 7 sins laws, so he would be able to destroy them with his concept of destruction mist, but alas! The paragon refused to give a hand, and those laws weren't so simple to understand even with the wisdom I involved. If they were simple, Lord Shiva would have added them to his list. In the end, Felix gave up on the thought and focused on the plans they had perfected. Right now, Felix could be seen standing inside a stark and empty dimensional pocket. Here, in this void-like expanse that stretched into eternity, he stood still on a leveled peaceful ocean surface. The area lacked any features, a blank canvas upon which the decisive battle would be painted. This was the arena chosen, and while it might seem bland, it was created by 4 Mother Siamese personally. It had a couple of features to make Nemo's alter ego life a bit harder. "Are you ready?" Thor asked with a solemn tone as he watched Felix fiddling with the golden earring in his hand. "Readiness has long since lost meaning to me, this has to be done, now, or never," Felix replied softly. "Just stick to the plan and you will succeed." Lord Marduk assured, "It's foolproof to anything Nemo could do." Foolproof was a strong word, but the tenants believed in the legitimacy of their final plan. With that much training against the paragon, they had studied every ability and technique. In the end, they worked together to create the most perfect plan that would account against any resistance shown by Nemo's alter ego. One could say they had over-prepared for the battle. "Let's see how it goes. Everyone has done their part, it's on me to show up," Felix uttered with a stern expression as he tightened his grasp on the earring. Then, with a single, deliberate motion, Felix brought in his hands together and the air around him started to ripple with energy. In an instant, the once barren battlefield transformed dramatically. Hundreds of crystallized step UPS materialized across the vast space. These platforms hosted an array of floating sniper rifles, each enhanced with hundreds of activated electrical rings. The rifles, poised and ready, were loaded with chambers filled with destruction bullets, designed to target and neutralize any symbols that Nemo's alter ego might manifest. Simultaneously, thousands of tentacles, crafted from water and laced with poison, emerged from the ocean. They writhed and twisted, creating a labyrinthine network of traps and barriers, ready to ensnare and incapacitate. Alongside the tentacles, gigantic monstrous beasts rose from the water too. Their formidable presence added a layer of brute force to the battlefield, each creature an embodiment of Felix's control over elemental forces. In addition to these defenses, Felix strategically opened small spatial portals throughout the battlefield. These portals, shimmering gateways to different dimensions and locations, served multiple purposes, as escape routes, surprise attack points, or even as means to redirect attacks from Nemo's alter ego. This should do it for Plan B. As Felix surveyed the battlefield he had created, his expression was one of calm readiness. He knew he could do more to prepare the battlefield, but at the same time, he understood that more wasn't better, especially against beings like Nemo. He doubted any of his preparation could help much if things went south, but it was better to have them than not at all. "Mother, are you set? You may begin." After receiving the telepathic confirmation, Felix stepped in the pocket dimension of the earring without batting an eyelid. This time, he entered it with his real body. As always, the hall, vast and dimly lit, exuded an air of foreboding, its walls etched with inscriptions that shimmered faintly in the gloom. At the center of the hall, Nemo's alter ego was seen floating above this platform in his dark flame form. Nothing changed even when the time ran at the same frequency as on the outside. Felix paused at the entrance of the ceiling hall, taking in the scene before him. His journey, marked by relentless training and preparation, had led him to this moment, a confrontation with a being whose power threatened the balance of the cosmos. As he stepped forward, his footsteps echoed through the hall, each step resonating with the resolve and determination that have carried him through the ages. His footsteps seemed to have conjured up Nemo's true form as the dark flame turned into a massive serpent-like creature with a head horse and thin red eyes. Felix gazed at him straight in the eyes without an ounce of emotion in them. "Will you look at who resolved to visit?" Before Nemo's alter ego could make a single sarcastic comment to relieve some of his boredom, he found Felix already right in front of his face while holding onto a battle-axe. Utterly stunned and confused, he gazed into Felix's eyes, which were shimmering with grey light. With a fluid motion, Felix raised his battle-axe, the weapon now an extension of his will and the conduit for his spell. Eternal chronoic chains. As he murmured in his mind, a magnificent grey hexagon materialized above Nemo's head, matching perfectly with the hexagon in his eyes. The hexagon was extremely complex with trillions of tiny runic inscriptions written on it. If an elf was ever to see them, white foam would emerge from his mouth from being utterly overwhelmed. Cling! 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 Suddenly, brilliant white chains emerged from the hexagon, shimmering with the power of trapped time. The chains descended upon Nemo's alter ego, wrapping around him in an intricate pattern, and binding him in an effect that was so cursed, Felix wouldn't wish it against his worst enemies. It was locking him in an eternal loop of the present moment. The chains didn't merely restrain Nemo's alter ego physically, they bound his consciousness, making it impossible for his mind to move forward to the future or retreat into the past through memories. He was trapped, perpetually, in the now. As Felix stood still before his immobilized foe, the grey in his eyes reflecting the power he had just wielded, he knew that he had successfully executed one of the most formidable spells known in the universe. Yet, this was merely the first step of their plan. Nemo's alter ego is living in the same moment of you entering the sealing hall and sealing him over and over again, without knowing that he is reliving the moment infinitely. Thor said with a solemn tone as he watched Felix get dangerously close to Nemo's alter ego, "It ain't guaranteed if he will ever free himself or not, but he must commit to the merge." Felix didn't show an ounce of fear or hesitation at such a significant turning moment in his life. He reached out with his hand and placed it on Nemo's alter ego's frozen face, then, he uttered the seal-releasing key sentence. The instant he finished, the four soldiers' eyes lit up and seemed to stare at his soul, seemingly asking him if he was sure about his decision. But it was a mere illusion, their stiffened hands released the chains at once and they fell into the ground noisily, leaving the platform to be hovering alone. However, this time, it resembled a mere normal platform without any power to hold back Nemo's godhood. 1597 The Infinite Time Loop. Here we go. The moment the seal was broken, the paragon Lilith showed a faint interested smile on the outside, but her inner emotions showed something else, impatience, excitement, and a bit of sinisterness. She was standing among the tenants with her arms crossed, mixing in naturally like Felix's consciousness space had become her home. It wasn't far-fetched to call it as such, she had been staying with them ever since Felix wished for the immunities. The seal is broken, now, Nemo's alter ego is being held purely by Felix's time spell, Thor remarked with a solemn tone as he watched Felix and Nemo's alter ego hovering together midair. While the omnipotent time spell was extremely powerful and considered on the same level as an advanced elemental ability, this was still a Unigen. Fortunately, Unigens weren't immune to elements or laws just like primogenitors and other beings. With all of their greatness and powers, they could not obtain immunities like Felix or other humans since their bodies weren't receptive to other elements. They were immune only to the laws and elements they wielded. The Paragon of Sins had assured them that Nemo's alter ego might be able to wish for a temporary immunity, but it was impossible to wish for a permanent one. That's because the universe delivered wishes only if its conditions to work were already there. For example, the Paragon of Sins could never wish to obtain the powers of another Unigen regardless of the price unless he had the condition available to host its powers. Greed Law's wishes were powerful, but not omnipotent. Without waiting for anyone to tell him what to do, Felix swiftly started the devouring process of the Unigen's cores. Consume it. With a concentrated will, he commanded Asna's core to engage in a direct and perilous confrontation with Nemo's core. Inside Felix, Asna's core began to resonate, glowing with a radiant white light that signified its purity and immense power. It pulsated with a steady rhythm, like the heartbeat of a celestial being. Simultaneously, within Nemo, his core revealed itself, shimmering with a dark, ominous color that spoke of its profound and malevolent energy. Whoosh! Whoosh! As Felix initiated the process, Asna's core reached out to Nemo's core. The air around them seemed to throb with anticipation as the two cores, each a manifestation of their bearer's essence, prepared to clash in a battle that transcended physicality. It's starting. It's really happening. How marvelous! Asna is truly on a higher realm than other Unigens. The tenants were left astounded and dazed at the sight of the two cores, one bathed in light and the other cloaked in darkness, starting to merge, their energies intertwining in a cosmic dance. This merging created a symbol akin to the yin-yang, representing the duality of their natures. Light and dark, creation and destruction, good and evil. Unfortunately for Nemo's core, the resemblance was only in appearance. There was no balance of powers between them as Asna's core began to overwhelm his core. This was not a battle, this was a feast, and Nemo's core was the main dish. Arg! Meanwhile, the process wasn't going blissfully for Felix at all. The throbbing pain was relentless, pulsating through his body and soul in waves that left him gasping for breath and writhing in agony. He felt like his body was going through all of his 7 bloodline replacements simultaneously, putting him in an unenviable situation. Yet, Felix remained unfazed. He was already told that the process wasn't going to be a picnic, and he prepared himself mentally for it. Asna's core is devouring Nemo's core, but since it doesn't want to taint itself with foreign energy and powers, it releases it on the host. Lord Hades shared expressionlessly, "Survive it and you will possess the paragon of sin powers, and after you break through the origin realm, the universe will ascend you to the only available worthy status of your powers, a Unigen." Lord Hades' words were monotonous, but in Felix's ears, they were like encouraging music. In his mind, he had finally reached the finish line in his bloodline path, and no matter how painful and agonizing the process was, he would never give in. He would never disappoint the struggles that got him here. He would never disappoint Asna, who invested everything in him and trusted him even with her core. He would never disappoint his family, his masters, his friends, and everyone he met on his journey, who made this situation happen in the first place. Never. With bloodshot eyes and veins popping across his entire body, Felix uttered with great difficulty, finding it hard to even breathe. While Felix was fighting off against the greatest hurdle in his life, Nemo's alter ego was living in a different scenario entirely. He was frozen in the very moment of Felix's arrival, locked in a perpetual present. Each iteration of the loop was identical. Felix appearing before him, a prelude to a battle that never progressed. "Will you look at who decided to visit?" This was the only sentence he kept uttering again and again with each iteration. To Nemo's alter ego, every loop felt like the first time, his memories of the previous iterations erased, leaving him in a constant state of initial confrontation. As this eternal loop continued, a sense of unease began to grow within Nemo's alter ego. It was an instinctual feeling, a primal sense of danger that gnawed at him. Why do I feel like I am in grave danger? The moment this thought came into his mind, Felix showed up before him and the loop started all over again. With the loop restarting, his danger senses were the only thing being retained. With the new loop in progress, he transformed jittery, his eyes darting around, trying to discern the source of this inexplicable threat. What the hell is going on? New loop. Am I finally losing it after enduring imprisoned for this long? New loop. What's going on in here? Is it you? New loop. It's coming from my core. How can I feel a threat on my core? Is it the seal? New loop. My core. What's happening to my core? Gradually, he became aware of a strange sensation emanating from his core. At the start, it was nothing intense, but as more loops occurred, a strong sensation of being consumed, eroded from the inside. Panic started to set in as he realized that his core was under attack, devoured by an unseen force. Since he couldn't retain memories of Felix appearing in front of him after each loop, his guess was always related to the seal. Unfortunately, the moment his mind attempted to seek a solution or ponder too deeply, the loop came to a halt and the only thing left in his mind was the mysterious pressing sense of his damnation. It was a true hellish experience and even Nemo's alter ego seemed unable to break from it. However, he was still a Unigen through and through. When his danger senses reached the limit, he was left with no other option but to rely on his powers even though he knew that the seal had them locked down. I wish to know what the F***ck is going on. He wished while using his greed laws, knowing deep down that his wish was going to fail. But, he was surprised to find out the opposite. His wish went through and the universe delivered scenes straight into his mind, showing him exactly what was Felix doing to his core outside of the loop lockdown. You. Just as he was about to react to it, the loop ended with him in the spell's chains and a new one commenced with Felix entering the sealing hall. All the memories obtained in the past loop were erased yet again, including the ones showing the truth of his dilemma. However, one thing changed this time: the price paid to fulfill the wish wasn't retracted as it was above the spell's grade. Nemo's alter ego sensed the change in his energy reservoir, giving him the only hint he needed. I used an ability, the seal is broken somehow. He uttered with a bewildered tone. In the present, he could feel that the seal was still intact, which created his assumption invalid, but the evidence not lies. He was certain that he had used an ability, maybe not now, but he did use it, either in the past or the future. When the moment came of Felix appearing in front of him and using the spell's chains against him, Nemo's alter ego was finally about to connect some of the dots. Just before the loop ended and a new one was about to launch, he uttered with a cold tone, I must be under the effect of a time spell. I wish to be temporarily immune to time elemental/law powers. Just as the loop was about to conclude, the wish's effect had manifested and the loop ended up frozen in the last split second. Then, with the shattering sound of a mirror, the sealing hall collapsed into glass fragments, and Nemo's alter ego opened his thin crimson eyes to the sight of his core breaking apart into pieces and enduring absorbed through Felix's body. With a deep demonic voice that seemed to come from hell itself, Nemo's alter ego asked Felix, "What are you doing to my core?" 1598 prepared against all possibilities. For a moment, Felix and the tenants were frozen at Nemo's alter ego's unexpected breakout. They all knew there was a small chance of their main plan falling off, but still, at the depth of their hearts, they wished for things to go smoothly, believing that the process might end before Nemo's alter ego found the only method to free himself. They knew about the possibility because Lord Hades had told them Nemo's core wouldn't get frozen by the spell and it would certainly warn him. Felix went for the omnipotent spell instead of the greater spell used on Nemo for this exact reason, knowing that it would be much weaker and when the core warned Nemo's alter ego, he would break it off much faster. Plan B. Thor bellowed at Felix. F***ck. Gritting his teeth and pushing through the agony, Felix launched into Plan B. With a swift, calculated motion, he channeled his energy to activate a contingency he had set in place. He forcefully kicked, both himself and Nemo's alter ego, out of the safety of the golden earring's pocket dimension. The transition was abrupt and disorienting. One instant they were within the confines of the sealing hall, and the next, they were catapulted into the heart of the prepared battlefield. This battlefield was an expanse filled with floating sniper rifles, destructive bullets, water and poison beasts, tentacles, spatial portals, and most importantly, Four-Mother Siamese. Four-Mother! Felix shouted without any context, but Four-Mother Siamese understood what he wanted from her. No need to yell, I got it. Four-Mother Siamese replied calmly as she emerged into the scene in her physical form, resembling a radiant goddess blessing mortals with her attendance. With a graceful yet powerful gesture, Mother Siamese unleashed her formidable control over the dimension. She focused her energy on Nemo's alter ego, creating an intense gravitational field around him. This field exerted a crushing pressure, invisible yet overwhelming, binding him in place. Nemo's alter ego struggled against the immense gravitational force, but it was unyielding. He found himself unable to move, as if anchored to the very fabric of the cosmos. I just need to keep the cores linked no matter what it takes for the next 3 seconds. Felix gritted his teeth, agony overwhelming him, but his mind was as focused as a cat preying on a bird. All of their plans were anchored around the cores remaining together, and the best time to make it happen was when Nemo's alter ego was still stumped by the whole assault. Bunch of worms. You think I will stand by and let you succeed? Alas, Nemo's alter ego wasn't a joke to be trifled with. He was fueled with rage and an unfathomable amount of hatred way before the assault took place. Now that the seal was uplifted, whether he understood what Felix was doing to him or not, he was seeing only red. Summoning the essence of the greed laws, Nemo's alter ego made a new wish, becoming temporary immunity to space, destruction, and gravity. The air around him crackled with the power of the wish taking effect. A shimmering invisible barrier enveloped him, neutralizing the crushing gravitational force exerted by Mother Siamese. Because he was wishing for temporary immunities, the universe wasn't transforming his body to enable the immunities like Lord Marduk was doing with his creation element. Instead, he was getting a temporary shield or a barrier that was immune to those elements, which in turn, helped him out of his predicament like before. He will attempt to escape into the void realm. As Felix anticipated, Nemo's alter ego attempted to use Void Blink to retreat and break Felix's momentum. He focused, expecting to vanish and reappear far from the battlefield. However, to his shock and frustration, the attempt failed. Hey? You! Confusion turned to realization as Nemo's alter ego began to understand the depth of his predicament. He was not merely in a dimensional pocket as he initially thought. Instead, he was trapped within a dimension that was nestled within millions of layers of other dimensions. This intricate labyrinth of dimensional layers had effectively cut him off from the void realm, rendering his escape abilities useless unless he broke through all of the dimensions. The void realm was a mirror to the universe and all naturally created dimensional pockets and realms. What Mother Siamese and Felix cleverly thought to sever Nemo's connection to the void realm was adding unnatural layers of dimensions above the natural one. This didn't mean that Nemo's alter ego could not establish a connection swiftly with the void realm. After all, he was still the guardian of the void law and realm. But, in his current predicament, those few seconds to break through the layers of dimensions and establish the connection was an extremely difficult price to pay. Nemo's alter ego understood this more than anyone else. Still. How foolish, I can go around the lockdown with a mere wish. Nemo's alter ego sneered. You can try, Felix smirked with a slightly unhinged expression. Nemo's alter ego didn't like Felix's out-of-place confidence, but he paid it no heed and tried to escape through his greed laws. However, when the fox symbol manifested above him and the wish's effects were about to take place, it suddenly collapsed on itself, which implied its failure. How? What did you do? Nemo's alter ego uttered with a shocked look. If you are so smart, find out by yourself. Felix sneered, not wanting to share his answer since it was related to his sins immunities. Nemo's alter ego still had no idea that Felix was immune to all 7 sins, which in turn, would make the fight drastically different from what he had in mind. His wish failing was the perfect example. Because Felix had greed sin immunity and he was considered at the instant one with Nemo's alter ego due to the cores merging, any wish related to teleportation, transportation, or such that would affect both merged cores would always fail. All due to Felix being immune to the effects of the greed sins, either positive or negative from Nemo's alter ego. In the same sense, Nemo's alter ego could not wish to break apart the cores, attack Felix, or such, and Felix desired him to remain ignorant to waste his time with those useless attempts. With so many great minds involved in this conflict, everything was planned to the last dot to avoid any surprises. As expected, his response pissed off Nemo's alter ego more than he already was, causing his crimson eyes to be set into flames of evil energy. You think I am scared? You want me to stay so bad, so be it. He said with a suppressed nightmarish voice, removing any thoughts he had any more about the retreat. He desired to play it smart to think things through before committing to anything, but now? I will prove to you that you are the one who has imprisoned yourself with me, not the other way around. With a sinister smile that stretched across his pitch-black face, Nemo's alter ego tapped into the wrathful aspect of his immense power, summoning 2 wrath symbols, each showing a glowing dragon with a menacing red light. The first symbol pulsated with fierce energy, and in response, Nemo's alter ego underwent a startling transformation. His body split into 7 distinct forms, each a manifestation of one of the 7 deadly sins. As these 7 forms materialized, the second wrath symbol activated and started feeding off Nemo's growing anger and resentment, fueling an increase in strength for each of his forms. Rampage symbol. Felix and the tenants knitted their eyebrows in seriousness after recognizing the symbol. The Paragon Lilith had demonstrated to them its potent ability to empower her strength based on her anger level. During the demonstration, her power increase was mild due to her lack of rage, but in Nemo's alter ego's case? Within moments, the strength of each form at least doubled, creating a formidable array of adversaries, each radiating with a godly pressure. He sure is livid. Now, the fun will begin. The Paragon Lilith giggled while eating popcorn from a small bucket and sitting on a comfortable leather chair, seemingly enjoying a cinematic movie. 1599 The only win condition. Meanwhile, Felix didn't show an ounce of fear at the sight of the 7 empowered versions of Nemo's alter ego, each resembling a black eastern dragon with the head of the sin's animal, and eyes shimmering with the color corresponding to their sin. He kept his eyes affixed on Nemo's main form, which was the one utilizing the wrath sins. While his forms were freed and surrounded Felix from all directions, Nemo's main form was still in its place due to the cores. How irritating, I can't break out my core. When Nemo's alter ego attempted to use the simplest option, which was pulling his core away from Asna's core, he realized that was no longer an option. The 3-second window had elapsed at last. You should give it up, more than 50% of your core has been devoured. Felix smiled with bloodshot eyes, appearing a little bit crazy. We are in this together until the end, whether you like it or not. While Felix said this, in truth, he knew that Nemo's alter ego could still easily separate his core from Asna's. He only needed to sever the connection by killing him. Asna's core wasn't acting on its own and considered Felix as its new host or owner, and if he died, it would stop the process immediately. While Nemo's alter ego had no idea about this, he was certain about one thing. I promised to torture you when the seal breaks apart, and I am going to keep my promise, but for now. Nemo's alter ego uttered coldly, drop dead kindly. The moment he finished his sentence, his form suddenly shifted, condensing into a more humanoid shape with 7 sin symbols tattooed on his chest. His skin was grey and his long hair was crimson, matching well with his bright red eyes. He was fully nude but had no reproduction organ below, making him gender-neutral like most of the Unigens. Felix ignored the situation down there and focused on his fists and kicks which were charged with swirling void and evil energies. He wants to fight up close. Felix, recognizing the shift in combat style, prepared himself for the ensuing melee. He swiftly downed 2 potent rank 6 potions, God's Pillar and Divine's Protection. God's Pillar was used to double his all-rounded strength temporarily while Divine Protection enshrouded him in a golden skin-tight barrier capable of absorbing 90% of the damage done to the body temporarily. Divine Protection was Felix's first original rank 6 potion and he had honestly concocted it by accident while he was seeking to concoct the potion to facilitate his elemental treasures/minerals absorption. How cute, you think some potions are enough to rival me? I can take you down with a single form. Nemo's alter ego snickered in ridicule as he launched at Felix with his empowered fists and legs. Armed with his battle-axe, Felix remained silent and met Nemo's alter ego head-on. Boom! Boom! The clash was immediate and intense, with Felix swinging his axe in powerful arcs, each strike aimed with precision and backed by the augmented strength from the potions. Alas, Nemo's alter ego countered easily with a barrage of void and evil energy-infused blows, his fists and kicks, creating shockwaves upon impact. The two monsters moved in a deadly dance, their movements a blur of speed and power, leaving even the primogenitors with difficulty catching up to them. Their strength is close to 4 million BF, one punch from them is enough to cripple us for a lifetime. Ramongander commentated with a solemn tone as his slits kept sliding across his irises rapidly, trying his best to keep up. Nemo's alter ego hasn't even used his other sins, his pride is getting in the way. Elder Kraken shared while staring at the 6 other forms, floating in the sky menacingly. Only 2 wrath symbols were used and Felix was already having difficulty keeping up with Nemo's alter ego's onslaught. Boom! Boom! SHT, I can't focus on the pain of the merging process eating through me, shouldn't this effer be under much more intense pain than me when his core is being eaten? Felix, agile and calculated, looked for openings in Nemo's defenses by using truth and wisdom visions merged, but to no avail. Nemo's defenses were absolutely impeccable no matter how complex his maneuvers were, combining axe strikes with feints and dodges. Nemo's alter ego responded in kind. His humanoid form moved with a grace and speed that belied its power, countering Felix's attacks with precise and forceful blows, making him seem like he was fighting his entire life. But in reality, this was his first genuine fight ever since he was born. Is this all you have? I haven't even used 10% of my powers, wanting to devour my core with such embarrassing strength? You should be ashamed. Nemo's alter ego kept mocking Felix constantly, seemingly playing around with him like he had the entire battle in his grasp even when his core was being devoured. One could only wonder if that was pure stupidity or absolute confidence in his strength and status. Ack! With a bellowing pained grunt, Felix led the battle toward the ocean, trading blow after blow, but receiving most of them, unlike his counterpart. The instant they reached the ocean, Felix made a mid-air spin and kicked his battle-axe from the hammer's side, causing the blade's axe to surge with deadly momentum. With an unfazed smirk, Nemo's alter ego merely crossed his arms into an X shape and blocked the raging sharp blade with his infused void slash. Evil energies. The battle-axe was extremely resistant to such potent powers since Felix possessed the same powers. Yet, before its true owner, the blade disintegrated right before Felix's eyes like it was thrown into an acidic pool. *T. When he tried to pull it away to save it, Nemo's alter ego smiled coldly and tightened his crossed arms around the blade. This is what happens when you bring a toy against a god. Whoosh! Nemo's alter ego released a wave of void energy that was as potent as the void domain at the battle-axe, causing it to get erased in less than a split second, leaving behind only void energy particles. Before Felix could react to his divine weapon's sudden destruction, the void energy reached and covered him from head to toe. When the tenants heard this heart-wrenching cry, some of them couldn't even keep their eyes locked on the battle, if it was fair to call it as such. Candace's eyes were already filled with tears while her heart was beating at its fastest speed at the realization that Felix was going through the worst torture in his life. Even with the divine protection in place, he was still unable to resist the agony of void domain-like abilities mixed with the pain from the devouring process. Your cries are music to my ears and I would have liked to hear them for the next million years, alas, I will have to put a rain check on it for now. Nemo's alter ego said with a tone of sorrow, knowing that it was time to stop toying with Felix and end him to free his core. So, he lifted his leg high up, which was already infused with a vortex of intense purple and red energies. Then, without an ounce of hesitation, he landed on Felix's head with his heel, causing Felix's eyes to roll at the back of his head as he dove feet first into the ocean. Splash! Because the cores were interconnected, Nemo should have gone down there too due to the momentum. However, just like an unmovable god, he remained afloat with his arms crossed and the cores stretched to the limit before Felix's body was the one getting pulled back from the water rapidly. Still breathing? I forgot that your body was indestructible. Nemo's alter ego snickered as he watched the fast approaching uncontrollable body of Felix. He seemed like he had lost consciousness, but Nemo's other self knew that he was still in there. Without a change of expression, he tightened his fist next to his wrist while covering it with the other like he was preparing a Kamehameha from a Dragon Ball. The resemblance wasn't far-fetched as Nemo's other self began to condense void energy, evil energy, and neutral energy together into one point within his fist. As his body got closer and closer, his fist turned brighter and scarier. Siamese! Save him! He won't be able to take it! Thor shouted with an agitated tone, feeling his toes curl in utter fear at the insane power within that fist. I can't make a move. Mother Siamese replied with a cold tone as she glanced at the 6 other forms of his alter ego. It might not seem like it, but she knew that the moment she made a move and joined the fight, his other forms would join too. Thor, remember what Felix said, if his other self fought him 1v1, never interfere since it's the best chance we have to buy time for the devouring process. Lady Sphinx closed her eyes as she uttered, Felix isn't fighting Nemo's alter ego, he was fighting against time, that's the only win condition we found. Before Thor could reply, his alter ego's glowing menacing fist came into contact with his stomach, then, there was no then. 1600 Trust your body. A few moments before the punch was about to be delivered, when Felix was submerged in the ocean forcefully. He was showing signs of losing consciousness, but he was holding strong, knowing that the moment he passed out, the game would be over, and the story would be finished. There were no redos, no comeback, nothing. Alas, he tried his best to regain control over his body but to no avail. The force of the kick was too much and while his body was indestructible, it didn't protect him as much from internal damage. Right now, he felt like his body was a mere leaf under the mercy of a spring's breeze. Whoosh! With a sudden forceful tug, Felix felt his body get pulled back into the sky at a much faster speed. While his eyes were foggy and his balance was disoriented, he could see clearly that Nemo's alter ego was preparing the nastiest attack to finish him off completely. He said it will work out during a life and death situation, can my situation be any more serious? Felix thought inwardly as memories of him attempting to learn and master, one of the most powerful passives he had ever gotten his hands on, force absorption. Many years ago, in the secluded and tranquil northern forest of planet Stravi, Felix embarked on a daring and experimental journey to master the elusive ability of force absorption. Ever since he replaced Lord Shiva's bloodline and lost it, he tried his very best to learn and master it, but to no avail. Lord Shiva had told him that the only possible way to learn it was through being put in a genuine situation, where his life or death were hanging on a thin line. Alas, he rarely got put in such situations ever since he obtained Lord Loki's illusion domain. Still, Felix refused to accept this and kept trying his best to master it through repetition and practice, believing that if he managed to master many advanced abilities, it shouldn't be as hard. Alas, he couldn't be any more wrong. Determined and focused, Felix stood in front of a series of Argadite gemstones, known for their potent and destructive force. His plan was simple, to use the force of the Argadite explosions to train his body in the art of absorbing and containing external energy. Boredom! As he initiated the first explosion, the Argadite burst into a powerful explosion, sending a shockwave of force barreling toward Felix. He braced himself, channeling his concentration and energy towards absorbing the impact. First, focusing energy. He calmed his mind and steadied his breathing, reaching a state of heightened awareness. This mental preparation was crucial for the precise manipulation of energy required for the task. Second, cracks visualization. With his mind clear, Felix concentrated on the network of cracks on his skin, he visualized them not as mere decoration, but as potential pathways for energy flow. He was told by Lord Shiva that this mental image was key to transforming the cracks from mere physical traits into functional channels for force absorption. Third, energy alignment. Felix then aligned his internal energy with the cracks. He channeled a portion of his elemental energy to the surface of his skin, infusing the cracks with this energy. This step was delicate. Too much energy could widen the cracks and cause even more physical harm, while too little would be insufficient for absorption. Fourth, microchannel structuring. Through his focused energy, Felix manipulated the structure of the skin at the microscopic level. He strengthened the area around the cracks, making them more resilient and elastic. This structural adjustment turned the cracks into microchannels, capable of expanding and contracting to absorb external forces, instead of repelling it. Last, activation. As the explosion's shockwave finally made contact with Felix's skin, he actively expanded the microchannels at the point of impact. This expansion should have theoretically allowed the force to be absorbed into the channels rather than being fully transferred to his body, which in turn allowed the absorbed force to travel along these microchannels, dispersing through his body harmlessly or being stored for later use. Alas! Boom! The result was not as he had hoped. Instead of absorbing the force, Felix's body ate through the sheer power of the explosion. It did nothing to him though, but this didn't please Felix at all. Boy, stop being stubborn, you have the theory in order, and you have the steps in order. No matter how much you practice it, you will never succeed. Lord Shiva remarked indifferently while reading a new manga book. Sometimes, you just have to trust your subconsciousness and body to carry the job. I am not comfortable with that at all. Felix frowned. I need complete control over my body, especially in life or death situations. Felix would never be at peace if he gave control of his body and unconsciousness at such a critical moment. No one could blame him for this, as it was the same as letting Jesus take the wheel during a sudden turn of events in a ride. Right now, Felix was put in the exact unenviable position whether he wanted it or not, leaving him with no other choice, but to put his trust in his unconsciousness and body to take the wheel. All he did was repeat the same 4 steps to open up the cracks in his skin and welcome the incoming brutal punch of Nemo's alter ego. Hey! The moment he removed his consciousness from the equation, he was stunned at the feeling his cracks were giving him. It resembled the same as when he used either an active or passive bloodline ability with a mere thought. The only difference was that he manually worked on 99% of the activation and let the last 1% for his subconscious cover and save them. As Nemo's alter ego's fist, charged with an amalgamation of dark powers, connected with Felix, the moment of truth arrived. Get lost! Nemo's alter ego roared his fury away the instant he felt his knuckles come in contact with Felix's stomach. However, instead of the expected catastrophic damage, something extraordinary happened. The concentrated 3-colored energies emerged from Felix's back akin to a beam of light that traveled over the horizon, but Felix, the victim, the target, didn't move an inch. The force of the punch, which should have sent him flying into the boundaries of the dimension and collapsed his consciousness, instead, began to be absorbed by the network of fine cracks that had formed on his skin. As more and more of the energy was siphoned off, the glow from Felix's skin became brighter and more colorful. Soon, Felix's entire body started to resemble a miniature sun, radiating a brilliant and powerful light like his body was having difficulty containing the absorbed energies. Even when Felix absorbed the force produced by a nuke, it was nowhere close to this. Meanwhile, Nemo's alter ego, his fist still pressed against Felix's now luminous form, was taken aback. His expression shifted from one of confidence to stunned disbelief. The sight of Felix absorbing and transforming his most potent attack into a source of light was completely unexpected. Meanwhile, the tenants, observing the battle, were equally shocked. Their expressions mirror a mix of awe and delight as they witnessed Felix get rewarded at last for a millennium of hard work, and most importantly, putting his trust in his body. Force absorption, he pulled it off, he really pulled it off. This wasn't a surprise, he was always meant to learn it, he only needed to let go of his control a little, that's all. Lord Shiva uttered calmly. Just like Felix, he also mastered this ability during a rough moment in his youth. He had the theory in mind, and the practice in order, but he never managed to pull it off, until one fateful day, when his life hung in the balance and got saved purely by an instinctual activation of the ability. After the first activation, he never needed his subconscious ever again to utilize it, it was like his body finally registered what he wanted from it while absorbing the force. The same situation occurred to Felix at the moment. Right there, in front of the stunned Nemo's alter ego, he stood resolute, not moving an inch, while glowing brighter than the cores amidst them. Without any celebratory cheer or a mocking smug look at Nemo's alter ego. As cold as the winter night, Felix channeled the amassed power into his correct fist, causing it to glow with an intense, blinding light while his form dimmed down. Whoosh! Whoosh! The air around Felix's fist started to shimmer and ripple, distorted by the immense heat radiating from the concentrated energy. Waves of heat visibly emanated from his hand, painting the air with undulating patterns of light and energy. Without uttering a single word, Felix propelled himself toward Nemo's alter ego while drawing rear his glowing fist and, in a swift motion, unleashed a retaliatory punch aimed directly at Nemo's nose. With Nemo's alter ego being momentarily dazed, and the close distance between them, avoiding the punch was near impossible. The impact of the punch, supercharged with the absorbed energy, was utterly catastrophic. Arg! Nemo's alter ego, caught by the full power of Felix's blow, was sent reeling backward. The impact caved in his face, the power so tremendous that it shattered his sinister facade. Purplish blood spurted from his nostrils, mouth, and even eyes. It was a stark visual against his godly form, which made him seem like an untouchable entity. But here he was, hemorrhaging just like anyone else, obviously, it was because he had taken a humanoid form. But still, bleeding is bleeding.